Chapter 196. Tantalizing wine. As the old beggar man's implication fell, Hushi felt the spiritual power within her body suddenly freeze. She didn't feel any obvious spiritual power pressure, yet her limbs were pinned in place, and she was unable to take even a single step. Hushi's complexion changed greatly, feeling somewhat helpless before this shameless old scoundrel. If she didn't compensate him with wine, maybe he really would turn her into a maiden girl. She unhappily said, "Okay, so it's just a broken bottle of wine, right? So if I just compensate you it'll be okay? Stop trying to fool me." The old beggar man in no way trusted her. "Do you know where divine wine can be found? Which spiritual kitchen has a master vintner?" "Why should I know that?" Hushi sneered. "I only know that the wine I ferment is 100 times better than your spilled divine wine. If you don't believe me, release me and I'll immediately bring it out and give it to you." The old beggar man was stumped for words and stared blankly at Hushi. Slowly, suspicion crept onto his face. "Baby doll, don't think that you can deceive this old man." With that, his eyes flashed, and Hushi felt movement return to her limbs again. With a calm and collected face, she fished out a jug of her potent wine from the 9th secluded spirit spring. This wine was an imitation of Chinese white wine from her past life, and since it was made with the spiritual fruit from her space and diluted with spirit spring water, an ordinary person would become completely drunk with only 1 cup. It's best if you drink till death, old man." The old beggar man had originally believed that Hushi was only talking big, as after all, even the top spiritual kitchen in Miluo continent didn't necessarily have a master vintner. She was just a little teenage girl. How would she able to ferment good wine? However, when Hushi's hand held out a small black wine jug, the old beggar man's expression suddenly changed. From where he stood, he inhaled and tried to smell the contents of the wine jug. Then he deeply inhaled again. His muddy eyes immediately lit up, and his gaze focused on the wine jug with such concentration that it was like he was trying to burn a hole through it. It was covered with a lid, and yet he could already smell the potent tang of alcohol. If the lid was removed so that he could drink the wine. Gulp. The old beggar man sucked in an exaggerated breath. As fast as he could, he snatched the wine jug from Hushi's hand and opened the lid. For a moment, a strong fragrance mixed with spicy undertones assaulted their senses. The scent of Hushi's handmade wine overpowered the fragrance of the spilled divine wine in the alley, as it was far more potent. The old beggar man hurriedly held the wine jug to his lips and swallowed a few hearty mouthfuls. He couldn't help but laugh loudly. Such potent wine. "This is truly a superb wine, ha ha ha. Here I've been claiming in vain to be a wine connoisseur, and yet the divine wine that I drank is simply plain bath water compared to this." Hushi was too lazy to watch the smelly old beggar man go crazy with his exuberance, and since the debt between them had been settled, she turned around to leave. When the old beggar man saw that she was about to leave, he suddenly shouted anxiously, "Hey baby doll, don't go. This wine is really something you fermented by yourself?" Hushi coldly replied, "Yeah, so what?" The old beggar man's eyes shone brightly, and he swallowed down the saliva pooling in his mouth. "Then when you were threatening that woman, when you said something about squirrel mandarin fish, was that also true? Is the dish really so delicious?" Hushi frowned and asked with impatience, "In the end, what is it that you want? This smelly old man still hasn't settled matters yet?" The old man smiled mischievously, and randomly grabbing at his straw-like hair, he licked the edges of his lips. "Baby doll, I see that you're still young, yet have courage, insight, and talented hands. Have you got any past experience? Have you paid your respects to a sect master yet? Mind your own business." However, Hushi had barely finished speaking when she abruptly felt a burst of formless spiritual power surround her. This spiritual power barrier didn't have a murderous or threatening aura, but it caused her to be unable to move her body once again. Moreover, she had the terrible feeling that her entire body was being thoroughly examined. Chapter 197. Reluctantly accept you as a disciple. Hushi's face twisted in anger, and when her body was free to move again, she threw a handful of invisible needles at the old beggar man. The old beggar man dodged with an exaggerated movement while laughing mischievously. "Baby doll, while your appearance is pretty good, Your temperament, however, needs some work. This old man just wanted to test the level of your body's innate talent, to see whether or not you had the qualifications to become my disciple. It's not bad at all. Your temperament, strength, and the outstanding innate talent that you already possess at such a young age. All are considered rare qualities in the Jinling Kingdom. Since it's like this old man volunteers to tackle the difficult job of accepting you as my disciple. Hushi became enraged due to this smelly old beggar man's nonsense. She had never before met such a shameless troublemaker who wanted to rush in and accept a disciple. What's more, he even did it with an extremely reluctant attitude. Smelly old man, have you consumed so much wine that it's made you foolish? This young lady has no need of a sect master, and furthermore, I have no need of any type of master. There's no need for you to reluctantly do something you don't want to, as I'm unwilling to pay my respects to you as a master anyway. Finished speaking, Hushi turned around to leave without looking back. Hey, you undiscriminating baby doll, do you know who I am? The old beggar man angrily shouted at Hushi's back. Have you heard of the name Taoist spiritual master Xianqing before? Go to any random large sect in Jinling Kingdom, and see which ones dare not worship me. Cough cough. In short, throughout all of heaven and earth there are many people who want to pay respects to me as a master, yet I'm not willing to accept them. Today, I've given you a massive opportunity and have accepted you as my disciple, and yet baby doll, you would actually dare to ignore me. The old beggar man proudly spoke with his nose in the air, waiting for Hushi to return and beg to be his disciple. However, when he glanced in her direction, what was reflected into his eyes was the little girl's retreating figure as she walked further away into the distance. The old beggar man was stunned. He didn't expect that he, someone who was born many years ago, would actually have to sell himself as a master, and yet would still be refused. This baby doll didn't have any foresight. She was simply unable to tell the good from the bad. However, when he thought of that endlessly good wine, and remembered the name of food he had never heard of before, squirrel mandarin fish. Gulp. Swallowing his saliva, the old beggar man promptly tossed the dignified manner of a master to the back of his mind, and not caring about his image, he chased after her. Hey baby doll, is it because you don't believe in my skills? How about this old man demonstrates them for you? I won't move either my hands or my feet, and you see if you can land 3 hits on me. If you can't touch me, you lose. Would you then pay your respects to me as a master? Baby doll, do you know how many benefits you'll gain if you follow me? In the future, all of me Luo continent's handsome bachelors will line up and follow you. No matter how many of them you want, master will give them all to you. The whole time they were walking, Hushi felt like there was a fly continuously buzzing in her ears. This behavior of non-stop chatter and bargaining, which was completely unlike the usual composure of a master, was similar to the multi-level marketing schemes from her past life. Hushi was now beginning to wonder if her initial perception of him was wrong. In fact, she was now starting to think that he wasn't an expert sect master, and that he was just a genuine crazy man. As they made their way through Yanjing City, Hushi took note of Yanjing City's current situation. She discovered that after the spiritual power vortex had brought misfortune to the city, these past few days, the city had slowly recovered from its shock. Now a small number of people were starting to talk and guess about that unusual phenomenon, while the rest of the population were equally concerned and excited about exploring Song Mountain to find where the secret territory was located. This situation, while it wasn't the greatest, was enough to make Hushi sigh in relief. If someone had been able to track the spiritual power vortex, there was a chance that it could lead back to her in the future. Like an ordinary person that was falsely charged with a crime, perhaps she would unexpectedly encounter a variety of martial artists that would attack her from all sides. Or worse, they could try to use her for strange research and experiments. Even with all this, there was still one thing that caused Hushi to be in an excellent mood. Chapter 198. Shameless Old Man. This was due to the withered spiritual plants and spiritual herbs found in Yanjing City. Because of the spiritual power vortex draining the energy out of them, the price for just one spiritual plant stock, or one spiritual herb stock, would now greatly increase. And since all the spiritual plants in Yanjing City were now withered, including the ones stored in jade boxes. People who refined pills and used the spiritual plants for medical treatments now had no other choice than to purchase them from outside the city. Thus, this would cause the price of medicinal pills and spiritual plants to naturally rise at a frantic pace. Hushi recalled the medical herbs and the large pile of first-grade medicinal pills that she had just finished refining in her space. As a corner of her mouth perked up, a sly smile was reflected in her eyes. It seemed that an opportunity for her to make a fortune had finally arrived. The old beggar man following beside Hushi noticed that her expression changed. Rolling his eyes, he laughed as he said, "Oh, I wonder if you've heard about the unusual phenomenon that occurred a few nights ago? It was so dramatic that even the drunk in me was awoken by that thing. TSK, I wonder what sort of senseless person advanced in rank and caused such a huge commotion. If other people had observed this, it would certainly be disastrous. Although, with this so-called unusual phenomenon, there must certainly be treasures. On the surface it appears that the influential families haven't yet made a move, but secretly, they must be looking for the source. Hey, it'll surely be very lively in Yanjing City in the future, right?" As the old beggar man was talking, every so often he would glance at Hushi's face to gauge her reactions. With what he was implying, it was clear that he already knew Hushi was the main culprit behind the phenomenon. Hushi wasn't surprised that the old beggar man knew. When she had been wrapped up in the old beggar man's spiritual power a while ago, she was unable to shield herself and had felt like everything was visible to him. This included the secret of her space and muddled dantian. But there was no greed or killing intent in the old beggar man's eyes. Instead, there was cunningness and delight, like he was watching a good show. Hushi's face was blank as she spoke. "Oh, is that so? Such a mystical scene. I wish I had also seen it. Unfortunately, I wasn't in the city that day, so I didn't get to see it." The old beggar man's eyebrows raised and he lightly laughed. "Baby doll, it's okay to try and deceive others, but it's naive of you to try and lie to this old man. If I'm not mistaken, the seal within your body was only lifted a short while ago, right? That seal was rather complicated. If that seal had been at its strongest, then even this old man would have had to expend a lot of energy to remove it. For you to have been able to lift the seal so you could advance in rank, you would have naturally required a great amount of spiritual power. Calculating the time of your advancement, it seems to coincide with the time the unusual phenomenon occurred." Speaking until here, the smile on the old beggar man's face became somewhat wicked. "You tell me, with so many coincidences, if it was noticed by anyone observant, wouldn't they suspect you? I'm afraid that many influential families would assume the worst and not let you off." Hushi stopped walking and coldly looked at him. "In the end, what is it that you want?" The old beggar man was startled, promptly repeating his request. "Pay your respects to me as a master. And then give me delicious food every day." Without the slightest hesitation, Hushi shook her head. "No. Aren't you afraid that I'll leak your secrets?" The old beggar man asked in disbelief. "Why is this girl so stubborn?" Hushi sneered, splaying out her hands palm up before her. "Do whatever you wish. Even if he leaked her secrets, so what? Without evidence, how would he be able to prove it? As long as Dandan's existence wasn't revealed, based only on her unsealed muddled dantian, she really didn't believe that she would be hunted down by the martial artists of Miluo continent. As for those who offended her, she wouldn't hold back and would pay them back 100-fold. Of course, the most important thing is that Hushi had now come to a conclusion. Such a thing as daring to make another person's secret public, it really was a degrading act. This old beggar man who claimed to be Daoist spiritual master Xianqing, he was simply not worth thinking about. Chapter 199. Destined person. When the old beggar man noticed Hushi's carefree attitude, he became incensed. Since the start he had been speaking until the skin on his lips became chapped. Yet this little girl remained completely unmoved. Paying respects to him as a master was an opportunity that people yearned for, something they dreamed about. Yet why is there such a smelly girl in this world who didn't even put him in her eyes? And yet even though this little girl had nothing but disdain for him, he was still following her. At first it was only for food, but now he wanted to make this girl kowtow before him for just one breath. To think that he was the dignified Taoist spiritual master Xianqing. Could it be that he would have to yield to a little girl? What a joke! During the old beggar man's endless talking, Hushi finally arrived at the foot of Tsang Mountain. Currently, there were countless martial artists gathered on the east side of Tsang Mountain. What made Hushi apprehensive, though, was that compared to the previous collection of Meridian stage martial artists, there were now even several gold core stage martial artists loitering around too. Most of them circled around the base of Tsang Mountain, while everyone's eyes were trying to fixedly stare into the depths of Tsang Mountain. Sometimes they would look at each other with mutual understanding, their eyes brimming with a sparkling radiance. However, the strangest part was that amongst all these cultivators, no one dared to enter the depths of Tsang Mountain. Even the several low-level martial artists that had still been lingering around Tsang Mountain a few days ago were now no longer visible. The people standing at the foot of Tsang Mountain had clearly reached a consensus. Now they were waiting at the foot of Tsang Mountain, waiting for an important moment to approach. In the end, what was actually inside Tsang Mountain that made this group of people so determined to wait? But after seeing so many gold core stage martial artists, and even the arrival of a few nascent soul stage martial artists, Hushi completely stopped that train of thought. She was arrogant, but she wasn't conceited enough to think that she could handle 2 gold core stage martial artists. There was only one choice. If there was a group of gold core stage martial artists against her, then of course she would run away. What caused Hushi to rejoice, though, is that even all the martial artists were congregating around Tsang Mountain. Apparently everyone was already determined to focus on the direction of the entrance, which was on the west side of Tsang Mountain. And since Tsang Mountain was so vast, the north side was located on the other side of the country. Therefore, looking at the current situation, it seemed that her courtyard was still safe. Since the group of martial artists' eyes were all focused towards the west side, no one would come to inquire about a remote and shabby courtyard on the east side of Tsang Mountain. Hushi let out a sigh of relief, but then noticed that somewhere along the way the noisy old beggar man had suddenly become quiet. Hushi turned to see that the old beggar man was frowning as he pointedly looked at Tsang Mountain. He then quietly muttered, "I didn't expect that so many people would already be here. Could it be that it really is?" His next few words were too vague and muffled for Hushi to make out. Turning slightly to glance at Hushi, he continued and said, "Perhaps this was fated, and you're the destined person." What destined person? Has this old beggar man become insane? Instead of talking nonsense, he's now talking about something strange? However, watching the martial artists and the old beggar man's countenance, it seemed like there really was a secret territory hidden within Tsang Mountain. It was obviously a mountain without spiritual energy, and even the spiritual plants and spiritual beasts lack spiritual energy, so how could there be a secret place? "Baby doll, do you want to go to the secret territory?" The old beggar man's voice suddenly echoed in her ears, and Hushi instantly responded with, "I don't want to." The old beggar man's patient expression immediately stiffened, and he exclaimed in disbelief, "Baby doll, don't you know about the 1,000-year-old secret territory? It's a treasure-filled land that all martial artists yearn to find, home to a countless number of treasures. There's also the opportunity that you might find something beyond your wildest dreams. Why don't you want to go?" Chapter 200. Help you? What's the matter with this girl? She's so stubborn that she won't listen to anyone's advice. Even the secret territory that made all the martial artists go crazy wasn't tempting enough for her. She completely lacked any greediness. In the end, was this girl normal? Hushi sneered coldly, and with an indistinct expression in her eyes as she watched the group of martial artists, she indifferently said, "I would like to see the secret territory and treasure, but compared to those things, I cherish my life more. Do you think that I'd be able to beat those people?" The old beggar man wanted to say, "But isn't there still me as a master?" But when he heard Hushi continue speaking, he decided to keep quiet. "The things that I want in life, I will personally grab them. If I desire status, I'll climb up step by step. What has been taken from me will one day belong to me again, and if it isn't mine, it's useless to fight for it." Finished speaking, and without the slightest hesitation, She turned around and walked over to her small courtyard. Remaining where he stood, the old beggar man stroked his beard. He then clicked his tongue and shook his head. Baby doll's character is so stubborn. Doesn't she have any ambition? Just because you don't want to let this old man help you, you think I'd listen to your words? He, this old man will help you. When the time comes, baby doll, you'll owe me a huge favor. You not paying your respects to me as a master is impossible. My delicious food, gulp. As soon as Hushi returned to her courtyard, she was greeted with enthusiasm from Wet Nurse Chun, Xiao Li and the others. Xiao Li hugged Hushi's arm, fondness shining on her face as she said, "Miss, why did you go out for so long? I missed you." "That's right, miss." Wet Nurse Chun sized Hushi up, examining her clothes to see if there were any tears. "You're a precious eldest miss. Even if you disguise yourself as a man, how can you stay outside overnight? If someone conspired against you and ruined your reputation, how would that be good?" Inexplicably, Hushi recalled Nangong Yu's shameless flirting and teasing. When she remembered that he had told all of Hell King Manor's attendants to address her as princess, a blush immediately crept up her cheeks. After obediently listening to Wet Nurse Chen's nagging and indulging Xiao Li's pampered child antics, Hushi took their pulses. Xiao Li's body was recovering very well. Although her lost tail wouldn't grow back for a long time, the spiritual power within her body was abundant, and she no longer needed to worry that her identity would be discovered by people. Moreover, seeing her rosy complexion, the happy smile on her face, and her continuous chatter, with one look anyone would know that her life in Hushi's courtyard was very good. Her whole countenance was far more cheerful than previously, and she was no longer that shy, pale little girl who would hide behind her brother. As for the condition of Wet Nurse Chen's body, that was a little bit more complicated. After all, it's an old illness, and added with the fact that she hadn't been able to cultivate these past few years, all of her meridians had long since dried up. Therefore, for her to restore all of her lost strength, she would require a long period of rest. However, her dantian had already begun to accumulate spiritual power, so she would soon reach the third rank of Qi refining stage. Wet Nurse Chen wiped her tears, sighing with sorrow. "Miss, your medical skills are really amazing. This old servant never thought that she would be able to cultivate in this lifetime ever again. This must be Madam's soul in heaven blessing and protecting you. Miss, in the future, you might possibly marry a good person. Then when the time comes that I go to the underworld, this old servant will be able to inform Madam." Hushi couldn't even force out a bitter laugh. Doesn't Wet Nurse Chen know that following in the wake of cultivation, a person's body will become younger? Yet she's already planning what she will inform Madam of when she arrives in the underworld. Although the people around Hushi nagged and worried, it was all done out of concern and care for her. In her past life, Hushi had never experienced these kind of emotions aimed towards her before. It caused her to feel an indescribable fondness for these people. After dismissing Wet Nurse Chen and Xiao Li, Hushi summoned Shi Jia. When he arrived, she then fished out a pill and gave it to him. Chapter 201. Completion of Qi refining stage. This medicinal pill was something she had refined in Hell King Manor. Although it was a grade 1 medicinal pill, it wasn't made following a prescription used in Miluo continent, or one that was from the overflowing cauldron pill scripture. Rather, it was made according to Shi Jia and the others' body types, combined with a kind of intensifier to strengthen a cultivator's physique. This medicinal pill prescription was something that was listed in the overflowing cauldron pill scripture, but then Hushi had improved on it, creating the current prescription by herself. At first she had failed several times, until the last time, when she finally succeeded in her refining. As a result, she was only able to make a total of 30 pills. Hushi pointed at the medicinal pill and said to Shi Jia, "I've checked the descriptions of Miluo continent's medicinal pills, and found that they were basically focused on refining the spiritual power of a martial artist. Yet for all of you, you're all walking on a different path compared to an ordinary martial artist. Therefore, based on your unusual physical and spiritual advancement road, I specially refined this medicinal pill for you. However, I don't know whether or not this medicinal pill will have side effects. And I also don't know whether or not it will be able to help you advance to foundation establishment stage. You can choose to eat it or not. Actually, Hushi already knew that this medicinal pill wouldn't have any side effects. She knew that its biggest effect was to enhance a person's strength and speed, tempering a martial artist's muscles and bones. Also that their body could achieve the result of resistance to spiritual power attacks. However, when all was said and done, this was the first time that she had refined anything. Moreover, it was her self-created prescription. So just in case, she wanted to explain it all to Shi Jia and the others. But before Hushi had even finished speaking, without hesitation, Shi Jia picked up the medicinal pill and swallowed it. After a moment, Shi Jia felt heat in his abdomen. Following this, his meridians, including his dantian that had been devoid of spiritual power, suddenly became boiling hot. It was as if there was a steady flow of heat surging throughout his entire body. Hushi told him, "The force that is currently surging throughout your body will enter your meridians, circulating your body 12 times. After each lap, your body's strength will increase." Shi Jia promptly sat cross-legged, and in accordance with Hushi's instructions, he began to slowly absorb this powerful force. An hour later, Shi Jia rose from the ground with astonishment plastered across his face. Lifting one of his hands before his eyes, he formed a fist, and he seemed to hear each individual joint crack. It was like his body was now covered in a fine dusting of gold. "Miss, I believe I've perfectly completed Qi refining stage," Shi Jia shouted in pleasant surprise. In just one short hour he had gone from being 9th-ranked Qi refining stage to actually having completed it. This is something which he had never before believed possible, and yet, to his astonishment, young Miss had helped him to accomplish it. Hushi nodded and said, "Disperse these medicinal pills to everyone. I want to see the results they have on everyone, so this time it's only one per person." "Yes, miss." Shi Jia suppressed his excitement, taking the medicinal pills from Hushi's hand. "Once my brothers receive the medicinal pills, they will certainly be happy." Hushi then asked, "How's the situation surrounding Song Mountain been these past few days?" Shi Jia swiftly repressed his joyful expression and respectfully said, "Answering miss, the past few days a lot more people have come to visit Song Mountain, but they mostly focus on the west side of Song Mountain. A few days ago we had a number of martial artists examining our surroundings, but after that, no one has come here again. This subordinate sent people to secretly investigate the martial artists gathering around the west side of Song Mountain, and discovered that not only are some of the martial artists from influential families in Jinling sects, there are also martial artists from other countries, as well as people from the royal family. Previously quite a few conflicts occurred between the groups, but now it seems to have calmed down. Although, even when they do fight, they fight at a distance, as if they were afraid to alarm something inside Song Mountain." Hushi frowned. Regardless of what happens outside, don't bother about it. Don't go near the west side of Song Mountain. At the moment a lot of gold core stage martial artists have gathered there, and with your current strength, you wouldn't be unable to provoke them and live. When you go out try to be careful, don't let people discover you." Chapter 202, Lonely Dandan. Shi Jia quickly nodded. "Yes, miss. I will warn everyone here to be careful, and to pay attention to their surroundings." Hushi nodded. "You may go. With regards to your training, you can now start to enter the second stage." The second stage? Miss had once said that as long as they could get through the second stage's training, that they would then have the strength to fight Foundation Establishment stage martial artists. Shi Jia nodded excitedly, and accepted the medicinal pills from Hushi's hand. But just as he was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and respectfully asked, "Miss, may I ask, what are these medicinal pills called?" Hushi stared blankly. Name? Those pills were something that she had only recently created. How could she know what they were called? "I haven't thought of a name yet." Hushi couldn't care less about it and said, "You can all think of a name for it yourselves. Moreover, it was specially refined for all of you anyway." Hearing that, Shi Jia was immediately filled with delight as he ran off. He and the other servants weren't foolish. They knew how precious this medicine was. Just one pill was enough to finally temper an ordinary person's spiritual root constitution, helping their strength to equal that of a martial artist's after they had used supplement pills and cultivation methods. If the medicinal pills were to be sold on the market, they would absolutely be extremely expensive. However, Miss not only gave it to them without hesitation, she even gave them the right to name it. This was a big honor. It showed how much she trusted them. Hushi didn't expect that just because she was too lazy to think of a name, Shi Jia would imagine such complicated meanings behind her action. What's more, Hushi didn't expect that the illiterate Shi Jia and others would straightforwardly name the medicinal pills, invigorating pills. It was unknown now, but in the future, invigorating pills would become extremely famous in Miluo continent. And this horrible name would be forever engraved in every martial artist's memories. After dismissing Shi Jia, Hushi returned to her room and entered her space. What Hushi had learnt in Yanjing City before had made her realize that now was a good time to make money. But first, she would need to clean up her inventory, and then she could sell it all for a high price. Straight after entering her space, Hushi caught sight of Dandan sitting on a pile of mountain melon fruit. With an unhappy expression on its face, it bit into a melon and kicked its small feet in the air. Its fat round face was filled with loneliness and sadness. Once Dandan noticed Hushi, it cried out cheerfully. Throwing away the melon, it then pounced towards Hushi. "Mother, why are you only coming and seeing me now? I was almost bored to death in here." "What, mother, I don't want to stay alone in here anymore. I want to go outside and accompany you." Seeing him like this, Hushi felt somewhat sorry. Although her space was vast and rich in spiritual energy, there was only Dandan living alone in here after all, so if she didn't come, then he would certainly be lonely. Hushi appeased Dandan for a moment, and only after the small guy had calmed down did the two of them then proceed to start working on the spiritual field. Dandan had the nature of a filial son. A moment ago he was still weeping with an aggrieved and pitiful expression, but now that he was accompanying Hushi, he promptly tossed his loneliness to the back of his mind. Yet one moment he was helping Hushi with the farming, and the next he was running circles around her. Running around crazily in the ancient rhyme spiritual field, he made a flower garland and placed it on the top of his head. "Mother, does Dandan look good?" Having a chubby and plump small guy, with a garland of flowers on top of his head asking whether or not he looked good, Hushi couldn't resist laughing inside. Plastering an expression of admiration and praise onto her face, she nodded. Dandan is the handsomest." Dandan immediately became cheerful, then continued to run around the spiritual field in glee. With his silver bell-like laughter echoing in Hushi's ears, her mood became light and tranquil. Chapter 203. Adorable little pig. Of course, what made Hushi the happiest was the nature-defying harvest from the ancient rhyme spiritual field. Looking at the small mountain of spiritual vegetables, spiritual fruits, and spiritual herbs, Hushi's eyebrows raised with delight. In her mind, she calculated the amount of crystal stones she could earn. After she gained the crystal stones, she could use them to reorganize and expand her small courtyard. With all the activity surrounding Song Mountain, she wanted to shore up her courtyard's defenses. Once she had finished sorting out the ancient rhyme spiritual field, she realized that it was now morning outside her space. Stretching out her body, Hushi stroked Dandan's small head. "Okay, I'm going to go now. You behave in here. I'll come and visit you often." "No." Dandan tightly clutched Hushi's clothes with tears streaming down his cheeks, unwilling to release her. "Mother, let me go out with you, okay?" Dandan's big, watery, and misty eyes were a weapon that no one could resist. Yet although Hushi felt distress for a moment, she still firmly shook her head. "No. Don't you remember what old man Shumi said? If people were to recognize you, it would be very dangerous. Besides, your appearance is so unusual that it would definitely attract attention." Hearing this, Dandan immediately began crying and rolling about on the ground. Sobbing and sniffling, he refused to speak, instead continuing to loudly weep. This kind of attitude would melt the heart of anyone, even the most hard-hearted person. Hushi sighed. "Dandan, it isn't that I don't want to bring you out, it's just that your appearance is honestly too extraordinary. If I were to let you out, you and I will both be in danger. Unless you can change your appearance into something less conspicuous?" Dandan blinked his big eyes, his golden bean-shaped tears immediately stopping. Lifting his small head, he said, Change my appearance, like this? Dandan's voice had barely faded, when a roast-suckling pig suddenly appeared before her eyes. The eyes of the roast-suckling pig rolled around, looking extremely ridiculous. But aside from that, all the other details, including the alluring fragrance, were exactly the same as with the roast-suckling pig that Hushi had previously made. Hushi watched as this roast-suckling pig blinked its big eyes, and when it hopped around on its short legs, she couldn't help but laugh. Could her Dandan be any more amusing? While Dandan jumped about excitedly, he asked, Mother, is it okay like this? Dandan's spiritual power doesn't leak either. This was true. Dandan had changed into a roast-suckling pig, and except for his eyes, there was nothing unusual about him. He was just like a roast-suckling pig, and even with Hushi's sharp senses, she was unable to detect any spiritual power fluctuations coming from his body. It seemed that Dandan's transformation technique and a common martial artist's transformation technique were completely different. An ordinary person really wouldn't be able to notice at all. Hushi pondered for a moment, then said to Dandan, Dandan, change the color of your skin into a pale pink. Exactly like that. Now change your height, become a bit smaller. Shorten your nose a little. Under Hushi's instructions, Dandan's appearance changed little by little, until finally, an adorable pale pink little pig stood before her. She had seen this little pig on television before in her past life. It was the leading character of an animated film named McDull, one, who was once extremely popular in her past life. Since Hushi was an assassin in her previous life, she naturally hadn't had any time to watch cartoons. But once, when she was carrying out a mission, she had glanced at a television, and her mind automatically remembered its image. So when Dandan had turned into a roast-suckling pig, she naturally thought of it. Looking at Dandan's version of McDull, Hushi nodded. Perfect. Now you can go out with me. Hushi intended to first test out his appearance in her courtyard. If the people in her courtyard were unable to make out anything unusual about Dandan, then the risk of taking Dandan out of her courtyard with her would be much smaller. 1 McDull. Oh. Chapter 204. Faithful follower. The result, contrary to Hushi's expectations, was that Dandan's little pale pink pig appearance was unexpectedly well received by Xiaoli, Wet Nurse Chun, and the rest of the women in her courtyard. In fact, their love of Dandan was extremely intense. Even the only female amongst the slaves, Shigue, was affected. When she saw Dandan, her eyes shone brightly, while her expression revealed her wish to hold him tightly in her arms. Xiaoli, on the other hand, didn't have the same reservations and promptly hugged Dandan. She then rubbed her small face on his soft and tender skin, her expression as serious as a daughter-in-law's as she asked, Miss, is this your spirit pet? Too adorable. How can there be such an adorable spirit pet in Miluo continent? Hearing Xiaoli's words, a corner of Hushi's mouth twitched, because at the same time in her mind, she could hear Dandan's angry yells. Mother, this nine-tailed fox is too much. I'm a primary spirit. How can she pinch me like this? This is simply disgraceful. Can I eat her, mother? Hushi. You can't. Dandan immediately began crying. Then mother, quickly help me. Dandan doesn't want to be kissed and hugged by such an odd girl. Dandan's chastity will be damaged. Chastity? I see your integrity seems to have been washed away. Hushi firmly ignored the two small animals, and turned around to describe her business proposal to Zhongsan. The current Zhongsan had long since stopped being a wicked servant, and taking advantage of his position to bully others. After becoming Hushi's servant and succeeding in advancing his cultivation base, he was now Hushi's faithful follower. Servants were usually poor people who were sent to serve as servants for the household of a rich family. In order to earn money to live, they would constantly be thinking of ways to promote their own strengths. Now this young miss was able to help him advance, and not only that, she was also able to pay him much more than nail and manner. So, what reason would he have to not be dead set on deeply revering this young miss? Hushi had also seen the changes in Zhongsan's behavior, and found that, compared to Shi Jia and the others, Zhongsan's methods of handling the day-to-day affairs was much more efficient. After all, Shi Jia and the others were previously slaves, so she noticed that their abilities were limited. While on the other hand, Zhang Sen wasn't able to quickly improve his strength, but he was very adept at dealing with social interactions, making him more skilled than the other people in her courtyard. Zhang Sen accepted the low-level storage ring that Hushi handed him. After examining what was inside with his divine sense, astonishment lit up his face. "Miss, there's so many spiritual plants in here. Do you want to sell all of them?" His voice was laced with disbelief because this storage ring was filled with all kinds of spiritual plants. Moreover, each spiritual plant was fresh and full of spiritual energy. Where had the young miss managed to get so many spiritual plants from? Hushi nodded as she said, "Go find shopkeeper Zhou in Shengda Hall first. If the price he gives is reasonable, you can sell these spiritual plants to him." Shengda Hall's shopkeeper Zhou Yanan, was the young man who had helped her when she rescued and treated Xiao Li's brother, Wuxia. Remembering the common people's reaction at that time, she realized that Shengda Hall's reputation was well respected. So regardless of her background or character, it could be assumed that she wouldn't be cheated if these spiritual plants were sold to them. In fact, she was thinking that she would like to establish a long-term contract with Shengda Hall if possible. Zhang Sen hastily nodded, and very carefully put the storage ring away. But just when Zhang Sen thought that the young miss had finished giving him her orders, Hushi swiftly took out 2 bottles of medicinal pills, effortlessly throwing them to him. "These are spiritual supplement pills, 1 bottle for you, and the other bottle I want you to take to the market and find out their worth." "Spiritual supplement pills?" Zhang Sen cried out in surprise. Did you refine them by yourself, miss?" Seeing Hushi nod, Zhang San's dedication to Hushi rose sky high. Is there anything in this world that his young miss couldn't do? Chapter 205 Medicinal Pill Appraisal. "Miss, if I may ask, do these spiritual supplement pills also need to be sold to Shengda Hall?" Hushi shook her head while smiling slightly. "No need. I leave it up to you on how to deal with them. I only need to see a sufficient amount of benefits." The value of a medicinal pill was higher than that of a spiritual plant. Hushi was able to sell her spiritual plants to shopkeeper Zhou, but she wasn't able to sell medicinal pills to him. She was counting on the sale of medicinal pills to earn enough money to accomplish her courtyard's defense system. Zhang Sen had the bottle of spiritual supplement pills that Hushi had given to him, and he couldn't help but swallow a pill before doing anything else. As a result, intense spiritual power spread throughout his dantian in a flash, circulating to every one of his meridians. It was obviously such a strong force of spiritual power, but where it flowed through his meridians, there wasn't the slightest trace of pain. Instead, he was so comfortable that he wanted to groan. Half an hour later, Zhang Sen stopped meditating and stood up to examine his cultivation base. Shock immediately flashed across his face. He'd had a breakthrough? Within only half an hour, he had actually managed to break through from the 5th rank of Qi refining stage to the 6th rank Qi refining stage. Moreover, his meridians hadn't suffered any damage. It was as if there were no impurities at all in the medicinal pills. This is a first-grade spiritual supplement pill supposed to be so strong? Or did the young miss give him a special medicine? Zhang San's eyes shone brilliantly as he hurriedly left the courtyard. First, he brought the spiritual herbs to shopkeeper Zhou to sell, and then he signed a long-term supply contract with him. And without showing the bottle of medicinal pills that he carried, he proceeded to head towards a medicine institute that specialized in appraising medicinal pills. He believed that the spiritual supplement pills that his young miss refined would certainly be graded as extraordinary. For sure they'll be the highest first-grade medicinal pill possible. When it became time for the Medicine Institute to issue an appraisal certificate, so that the medicinal pills could be sold at auction, he firmly believed that they would be able to get a good price. Zhang San chose Yanjing City's most famous medicine institute to appraise the medicinal pills, Jinling's Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution. Yet after just entering the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution, Zhang Sen found his path abruptly blocked by someone. The servant boy in charge of registration at the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution noticed Zhang San's wretched clothes and low cultivation base, and he couldn't help but say with contempt, "Hey you, do you know that the cost of appraising a medicinal pill is at least 10 crystals, while the highest appraisal costs 1,000 crystals. Do you have enough for the appraisal fee? Zhang San's eyes immediately lowered, and from a chest pocket he fished out 100 crystals, placing them on a nearby table. With a quiet voice he then said, I want an advanced appraisal for a first-grade medicinal pill. When the servant boy saw the 100 crystals, he stared blankly for a moment, before he then registered Zhang San's words. Bursting into a fit of laughter, he said, You came here just to get an appraisal for a first-grade medicinal pill? Moreover, an advanced appraisal? Does your brain have some sort of illness? At the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution, there were different appraisals available for medicinal pills. Of course, the higher the level, the more that could be detected about the composition and element attributes, better allowing the examiner to determine the value of the medicinal pill. But if the medicinal pill itself was of poor quality, then to ask for an advanced appraisal would not only not have any benefits, it would instead reveal the ignorance and stupidity of the owner of the medicinal pill. If the owner were to spend so much money on such an appraisal, it would only end with people mocking them. Zhang San said, That's right, I want an advanced appraisal on a first-grade medicinal pill. As long as I can afford to pay with crystal stones. What is it any of your business what I want to appraise? The servant boy sneered, his gaze filled with contempt as he looked at Zhang San. Nowadays there's no lack of people like you. You accidentally get your hands on a medicinal pill. And then right away you think you picked up a priceless treasure, eagerly coming to us to appraise it. Hehehe, let me tell you, people like you will ultimately feel disappointment. Do you still think you've come to appraise a treasure now? While the servant boy had been speaking, he had registered Zhang San's medicinal pill, ordering someone to deliver it to the evaluation room. With a calm and collected face, Zhang San stood waiting on the side, completely without the intention of refuting the servant boy. Chapter 206. High-grade spiritual supplement pill. Zhang San believed in his young Mrs. medical skill and ability. If she was able to make him, a low-level martial artist, advance from the 3rd rank of Qi refining stage to the 6th rank of Qi refining stage within a few short months, how could it be possible that the medicinal pills she refined were just an ordinary product? Zhang San was waiting for quite a while, and after the servant boy had sent off the last client and noticed he was still sitting and waiting, he couldn't help but sneer. Fool, it's useless for you to wait. In a moment, the result will come out and you'll find out that you wasted 100 crystals. You can't. The servant boy's words hadn't yet finished, when suddenly, a white-bearded old man abruptly rushed out from the evaluation room. While he was running with an excited and yet nervous look on his face, he yelled, Number 97. Who brought medicinal pill number 97 in to be appraised? Zhang San and the servant boy both stared blankly for a moment, before Zhang San looked at the number plate in his hand. He was number 97. With a glance, the white-bearded old man caught sight of the wooden number plate in Zhang San's hand, and like a whirlwind, he rushed over to him. Grabbing Zhang San's hand, he shouted, Was it you who brought in medicinal pill number 97? Zhang San answered, Yes, I am. Was there a problem with the medicinal pill? Was it you who found this medicinal pill? Where did you find it? Zhang San's cultivation base was only at the 6th rank of Qi refining stage, and moreover, it seemed that his overall innate talent was only ordinary. Of course the old man wouldn't think that Zhang San had refined this medicine. Zhang San shook his head. That medicine was refined by my master, I didn't find it. The white-bearded old man's brows suddenly rose in surprise, a radiant light appearing in his muddy eyes. You mean your master is the one who refined this medicinal pill? It wasn't found? Do you have any other medicinal pills in your possession apart from this one? Zhang San nodded and he couldn't help but ask, So how was it? What are the results of the medicinal pill? However, the white-bearded old man ignored his question and asked impatiently, Which great master is your master? Quickly take me to see him. Zhang San's brows wrinkled. If you have something to tell my master, you can tell me instead. My master is very busy. He has already given me full responsibility to handle all matters dealing with the medicinal pill. Zhang San had always been a shrewd person, so he was obviously aware that Hushi didn't want her identity revealed. How could he stupidly expose young Mrs. information? Hearing this, the white-bearded old man became frustrated. However, thinking about how all great masters were temperamental and eccentric, he was also relieved. This time, when he looked back at Zhongsan, he was smiling. So it's like this. The results of your medicinal pill appraisal have already come out, and no one expected that it would actually be a first-grade medicinal pill of the highest quality. Moreover, the appraisal found that the composition of the medicinal pill was perfect. This old man has never before seen such a perfect medicinal pill. Your master's strength absolutely already surpasses that of this sect master. How could that be possible? The servant boy exclaimed nearby, his expression one of shock and bewilderment as he looked at Zhongsan. As for Zhongsan, when the old man had passed over the appraisal results, he only glanced at it before his eyes widened with shock. First-grade spiritual supplement pill. Contains 10 crystals worth of spiritual power, 99% essence purity, and suitable for unrestricted long-term usage. This information, was it really that of a first-grade medicinal pill? It was even stronger than a mid-level second-grade medicinal pill. Firstly, the spiritual power contained in most top-level first-grade spiritual supplement pills was at max only 3 crystals worth of spiritual power, and secondly, the 99% essence purity. That was enough to make martial artists go crazy with longing. It meant that even if a martial artist consumed many spiritual pills, they wouldn't have to worry about an overaccumulation of spiritual power. This was practically an amazing way for a low-level martial artist to advance by medicinal pill. I am the vice head of this Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution, and also a 4th-ranked doctor. On behalf of the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution, I wish to sign a long-term contract with your master for this high-grade spiritual supplement pill. If there are any conditions you may have, we can discuss. Chapter 207. Visiting Sung Mountain. Zhongsan stood in place in a daze. And while he could hear the vice head of the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution politely discussing contracts, he only felt dizzy, like he was walking on air. What kind of frightening talent did his young miss possess in the end? If this kind of medicinal pill was to be sold, and this kind of attribute appraisal result was to spread out, it would absolutely turn all of Jinling Kingdom's low-level martial artists upside down, right? While Zhongsan was negotiating contract terms, Hushi was standing on a certain hill on the east side of Tsong Mountain. From a distance, she could see plumes of gray fog rising from the top of Tsong Mountain. And as she stared at it, she found herself contemplating. In regards to Tsong Mountain, she had researched about it in some of Miluo continent's ancient books and records. It was said that more than 1,000 years ago Tsong Mountain was once full of vitality. However, all in one night, every living thing on Tsong Mountain suddenly died. Moreover, after that, any martial artist that futilely tried to enter into the depths of Tsong Mountain never returned. Even their bones couldn't be found. And as time passed, all the spiritual plants growing on Tsong Mountain began to vanish, along with all the animals. The only thing to remain was a powerful darkness, where dark spiritual beasts would occasionally roam. Some people said that Tsong Mountain was cursed, and that anyone who ventured near would be cursed too, until finally, they suffered an unnatural death. Hushi of course didn't believe in curses, but since Tsong Mountain was obviously devoid of spiritual power fluctuations, it really gave her a strange feeling. The thing she found strangest of all, though, was that she felt like something in Tsong Mountain was faintly calling to her. And as time went on, this feeling only became stronger. Recalling that some time ago there was a blast of power, followed by spiritual beasts that headed towards her courtyard from Tsong Mountain, Hushi's brows wrinkled. It was fortunate that last time Shaoli was able to hold it back, so that the people in her courtyard were able to escape from disaster. But if it were to happen again, everyone would certainly be in danger. Glancing at Shijia and the others that were currently training in the valley, she then turned to glance at her courtyard where there was a curl of smoke rising from the kitchen chimney. Abruptly, she quietly said, "Dandan, we're going to enter Tsong Mountain and have a look around." Standing beside her, Dandan immediately lit up with happiness once he heard this and said gleefully, "Okay." Dandan wants to go on an adventure together with Mother the most. Recently, the things occurring in the vicinity of Tsong Mountain had made Hushi become somewhat concerned. The current atmosphere surrounding Song Mountain was very unstable. It was nowhere near calm and safe. Instead, it was very likely that since every major force in the Jinling Kingdom would end up fighting over the secret territory, this area would become a slaughterhouse. Although she was fond of this courtyard, in the end, the people here were more important to her than any object. So for those people, she would head to the east side of Song Mountain and properly examine it. If it turned out that it wasn't suitable to stay here anymore, she would still be able to move everyone as quickly as possible. Bringing only Dandan along with her, Hushi didn't notify Wet Nurse Chun and the others. Instead, she chose to trust Xiaoli to pass on the message, before she then entered Song Mountain. As she only planned to quickly examine the east side of Song Mountain, she assumed that she wouldn't be away for more than 3 days. Since Hushi had been watching the black fog rising from Song Mountain at a distance for quite a while now, she figured that the area closer to the mountain would be covered in a thick layer of fog, permeated with a sinister aura. However, as she got closer, she discovered that there were a lot of healthy green plants. Moreover, although there were no spiritual plants, and also no spiritual energy, the air was actually fresh and clean. There were even quite a lot of unknown wildflowers growing on the roadside, each of them emitting bursts of a flowery fragrance capable of lifting a person's spirit. Dandan, who had been closed away in Hushi's space, and then the courtyard for a long time, was now like a wild horse out of control as he ran around everywhere, exploring this unusual and vast area inside of Song Mountain. Hushi, of course, wasn't actually worried about Dandan's safety, as the two of them were connected. If Dandan was to run into danger, she would naturally be able to be there straight away. But not long after entering Song Mountain, the previously frolicking Dandan ran back to her, his small and short legs trembling. Chapter 208. Disappearing food. As soon as he saw Hushi, he clutched her leg and started sobbing. "Mother, there's a monster up ahead. I'm scared." Hushi became apprehensive. A monster? Except for a few dark spiritual beasts, there were no other kinds of animals in Song Mountain, right? Could it be that maybe what Dandan ran into was a spiritual beast? With great difficulty she appeased Dandan, and with him leading the way, Hushi cautiously walked forward. Not long after, the huge figure of a monster was reflected in Hushi's eyes, yet she couldn't help but release a sigh of relief, before she then burst out into a fit of laughter. What spiritual beast? This is only the large skeleton of a spiritual beast, that's all. But then this spiritual beast skeleton was really huge. The height of the skeleton was 3 times taller than Hushi, and if it was still alive, it would certainly be a huge monster that could terrify everyone. Hushi poked Dandan's head unhappily, saying, "You're such a coward. That's just a skeleton, yet it unexpectedly made you so scared." Dandan was still shrinking behind Hushi, and as he nervously peeked at the skeleton, his small body slightly trembled. No longer paying him any heed, Hushi walked towards the skeleton and carefully inspected it. She couldn't recognize what spiritual beast this skeleton was from. However, this skeleton was still completely intact. From its outside appearance she couldn't see any visible scars, or even any signs of poisoning. Picking up a piece of bone, Hushi examined its density, finding that this spiritual beast was in the prime of its life and full of vitality. Yet from the bone's color, this spiritual beast had died at least a few hundred years ago. What could have caused such a giant spiritual beast to wordlessly die, and without even the hint of a bruise? Hushi was puzzled. What had occurred at Song Mountain during that time? Following the discovery of the spiritual beast bones, Hushi and Dandan entered further inside Song Mountain. The deeper they traveled, the more skeletons they saw. Skeletons of all different kinds of spiritual beasts, and even human bones. Every skeleton was completely intact, and no skeleton showed any traces of scarring or bruising. It was like in one breath they had suddenly died, without leaving any traces of a struggle. The more Hushi saw, the more apprehensive she became. To be able to make all living things on the mountain die without them having the strength to resist. How formidable was that power? Did the so-called Song Mountain curse really exist? Hushi was deep in thought, when suddenly, she heard the sound of a stomach gurgling. As soon as she bowed her head, it was to see Dandan using 2 of his small piglet hooves to clasp his belly. When he noticed Hushi watching him, he laughed foolishly. Once he had seen that first spiritual beast skeleton, and experienced such a fright, and then seen so many spiritual beast skeletons along the way, Dandan had slowly begun to calm down. So now, every time he saw those smooth bones, all he could think of was delicious roast suckling pig. As a result, his stomach began to growl in hunger. Hushi looked at the color of the sky, and noticed that the sun was high in the clouds, indicating that it was now noon, lunchtime. So from her space, she removed all the food that she had prepared in advance. Barbecue meats, creamy soup, cool vegetables, all kinds of pastries, fruit salad, and even fruit juice made from spiritual fruit. It was like they were about to sit down for a leisurely picnic. Dandan held a piece of barbecued meat covered in grease to his mouth, and as he ate one side of it, he shouted, "Mother! The dishes that Mother makes are the best in this world. So delicious." After he finished devouring a chicken leg, Dandan extended a hoof to grab another piece. However, his hoof didn't make contact with the familiar tender and fragrant meat. Rather, it landed on an ice-cold tray. Dandan unwillingly extended his hoof to another dish, only to find that it was empty too. Grumbling under his breath, he got up and crawled onto the tablecloth to see the trays. Yet what greeted him was a strange scene. The tablecloth, previously overflowing with an arrangement of food, was now completely empty. One by one, all the food on every bowl and tray had disappeared without a trace. Even the soup had disappeared without a drop remaining. Chapter 209. Thief. Dandan suddenly remembered the skeletons he saw on the way, and he immediately pounced into Hushi's arms, panicking as he said, "Mother, there's ghosts, really real ghosts." Dandan scared. When Dandan had been in her space before it came to her and had been able to follow the owner of the previous space around, he had experienced a lot of human world knowledge. Ghost stories were one of them. So even though the cowardly Dandan was born as a powerful primary spirit, he was very afraid of ghosts. Although Hushi wasn't afraid, she still found this scene strange, so with a grave expression she wholeheartedly became alert. She didn't believe in supernatural beings like Dandan, especially in such a world where cultivation was real. The so-called supernatural beings were nothing more than the original souls of martial artists, that's all. But the scene before her eyes nevertheless caused her to become dumbstruck. After all, what sort of creature was able to make strange things happen in front of her, yet do it without letting her sense the slightest clue? Hushi got up to look around, and yet after still not finding anything, she checked and found that the food on the tablecloth was still rapidly disappearing. Hushi coldly snorted and suddenly waved one hand, collecting all the remaining food back into her space. The next moment, a familiar voice was immediately heard. "Hey, where did it all disappear to? I still haven't finished eating yet, put it back, quickly, quickly. That duck wing was really delicious. Girl, how did you make it? Give this old man 20 more pieces." A corner of Hushi's mouth twitched, and soon, an old man's body reeking of wine became visible. Surprisingly, it was the old beggar man that had been pestering her yesterday. She frowned and said, "Smelly old man, has no one ever told you what a thief is? With this type of morality and conduct, you still have the nerve to say that you're a large sect master? Ooh, baby doll is too stingy." The old beggar man stroked his messy beard and laughed loudly. "Aren't all delicacies of the world meant to be shared with others? Besides, we know each other, baby girl, so how can you regard me as a stranger? Quick, bring the food out again, I'm still not full. Ah, those duck wings. And there was also roast duck, so delicious. I've lived for so many years, and yet I've never eaten such delicious food before." Hushi's brows slightly raised. This old beggar man, although his behavior was crazy and weird, his strength was absolutely top grade. Suddenly taking out a roast rabbit leg from her space, she lightly swayed it in front of the old beggar man's face. With saliva sliding down from a corner of his mouth, he pounced at the roast rabbit leg. Hushi unhurriedly asked, "Want to eat it?" The old beggar man nodded repeatedly, lacking the slightest bit of decorum. Hushi then sternly said, "Then tell me, what happened to Tsong Mountain, and why are there so many spiritual beast skeletons inside? What are those martial artists fighting over?" The old beggar man's expression abruptly stiffened, before he then laughed loudly. Ooh, baby doll, didn't you say that you weren't interested in Song Mountain's secret territory? Why are you inquiring about it all of a sudden? Hushi sneered. I'm not interested in the secret territory, but the area I live in is located at the base of this mountain. I have to find out what kind of place Song Mountain is as my neighbor, and whether or not it'll be a future threat. The expression on the old beggar man's face flickered through countless emotions, before he then finally said, I just came here to have a stroll, that's all. The secret of Song Mountain and whatnot. How could this old man know? Oh, since that's the case, Dandan, this is for you to eat. Dandan took the roast rabbit leg from Hushi's hand. After he devoured it clean, he then held his small plump belly while laughing. Mother, it's so delicious, I want more. Chapter 210, Fighting Over Food. Such a waste, such a waste. The old beggar man said as he watched the disappearing rabbit leg, flinging his beard around in distress. I say, baby doll, why are you so serious? No matter what you want to say, I'm still your master. Presenting food to this old man as a show of filial respect is only proper. Hushi sneered. When did I agree to pay my respects to you as a master? Stop speaking nonsense. It won't hurt you if you pay your respects to me. Why would you rather give your food to this guy, but not give any to me? It's simply unfilial of you. After the old beggar man said this, he suddenly waved his hand in the air. Dandan, who had still been rubbing his belly, abruptly appeared being held by his neck by the old beggar man, and hanging in mid-air. Hushi instantly turned pale. Moving so fast her figure flashed, she rushed over to snatch Dandan back. However, no matter how fast Hushi moved, she couldn't even touch a corner of the old beggar man's clothes. While Dandan loudly cried, the old beggar man stroked his beard and laughed raucously. Baby doll, your innate skill is pretty good, but if you want to snatch this thing from my hand, then it's still too early for you. The light in Hushi's eyes slowly become icy cold, and closing them, she suddenly extended an arm. The next moment, the old beggar man's body was knocked down with a thump. Ooh, so you've landed the first strike. You unexpectedly have such a keen sense of intuition. Even if the old beggar man was taken down, Dandan was still captured by him. Only now he was floating in the air. Watching Hushi with a satisfied smile, he laughed happily. The more I learn about you, the more eager I become to accept you as a disciple. Hushi's face was cold as she looked up and watched as Dandan struggled in vain in the air, and she said with a grave voice, What do you want? The old beggar man's face fell, and he pitifully said, Baby doll, do you still have any of that roast rabbit leg? I've been hungry for many days and I haven't really eaten till full. Forget it. It's just food anyways, she still has plenty more. She's a normal person. She won't bother arguing with this crazy old beggar man. When the old beggar man saw the food, how could he care about holding Dandan hostage anymore? Who cares about paying respects towards a master? He exclaimed as he rushed towards the spread of food. And so once Dandan fell from the air with great difficulty, and saw that his precious food was now being eaten by someone, he immediately forgot his previous fear and furiously yelled as he rushed forward. Smelly old man, you're not allowed to eat my food. Mother's food is mine. Hushi held her forehead in resignation. This brainless little pig. He really made her not want to acknowledge him as her spirit pet. For a time, the old beggar man and Dandan began to compete in who could eat the most. So in the time it took to burn a stick of incense, the tablecloth that had been covered in food was completely demolished by the pair. Moreover, most of the dishes were meat dishes. The old beggar man rubbed his distended stomach and released a satisfied hum. Having been able to eat such delicious food in this lifetime, this old man could easily die without regret now. The food that mother makes, Dandan can eat it every day. Dandan pointed his small butt towards the old beggar man and scowled. In the future, only Dandan can eat it. I won't give you any to eat. Little guy, why were you the same as your master so evil? The old beggar man joked, yet as he examined Dandan, a trace of suspicion appeared in his eyes. This pink little pig was apparently that girl's spirit pet, but the aura emitted from this spirit pet was unusual. It appeared different compared with a common spirit pet. Even he was unable to see through its disguise. Although there were spirit pets able to speak on Miluo continent, it was very rare for a spirit pet to have such a high intelligence. Chapter 211. Greeting gift. It seemed that this little girl had a lot of secrets up her sleeve. The old beggar man rolled his eyes, and suddenly fishing a jade ring out of his pocket, he waved it in front of Dandan and asked, "Like it?" Dandan blinked his big eyes, then nodded repeatedly. The old beggar man laughed. "If you like it, then I'll give it to you. All you have to do is, the next time there's food, remember to save a bit for me." Dandan quickly rushed to him, and accepting the jade ring, he held it close to his chest. Then, glancing at the old beggar man, he eagerly ran to Hushi. Mother, the spiritual energy in this jade ring is so abundant. It's a very good item. If we were to sell it, it would certainly make a lot of crystals, so I'll give this ring to you." Up until now, Dandan still remembered that Hushi continuously said that his eating habits were making her poor. Therefore, whenever he now saw valuable things, he wanted to give them to her. If she were to then sell them, she would be able to buy food materials and cook delicious food. Hushi took the jade ring, and without needing to use her divine sense to check, she could already feel through her hand that it was something valuable. She couldn't help but extend her hand and stroke Dandan's head while praising him. Dandan really is a good child. A corner of the old beggar man's mouth twitched as he watched this scene from the side. His abundant dragon ring that everyone in the Miluo continent would forcibly take if the chance occurred. These two guys didn't know anything. They actually wanted to sell it. They were simply too ungrateful. The old beggar man glared at them, and after grunting, he then continued to gnaw on the last roasted sheep leg in his hand. For the sake of the food, he Taoist spiritual master Xianqing wouldn't lower himself to the level of these two common people. Finished devouring the sheep leg, the old beggar man gazed at Hushi. Yet this time, his expression became somewhat grave. Unlike before, he now no longer had the mischievous and lecherous expression of a wretched old man. "Baby doll, you really don't want to consider paying your respects to me as a master?" Hushi's expression was indifferent as she replied, "I'm not interested in a person with an unknown origin and unclear objective. Who knows if you harbor evil intentions towards my safety? Moreover, if I pay my respects towards you as a master, apart from cooking for you every day, what benefits do I get? This is a losing transaction that I don't want to do." Hearing this, the old beggar man's eyes flashed and he unexpectedly laughed, mysteriously saying, "What a joke! If you pay your respects to me, the Taoist spiritual master Xianqing, how could you not receive any benefits? If you don't believe me, I'll give you a greeting gift." Finished speaking, the old beggar man's left hand lightly waved, and suddenly, a gale erupted within the forest, while a plume of intense pressure abruptly filled the air. Hushi still hadn't figured out what that crazy old beggar man meant, when suddenly, she felt extremely dizzy, her body feeling as if it was being ripped apart. When she returned to her senses, it was to discover that she was now in a strange place. Before her eyes stood a closed stone door. The stone door was so tall that even when Hushi looked up as far as she could stretch her neck, she was still only barely able to see the top of it. Right above the stone door, there were 3 words scrawled in a blood-red script: "Sealed Dragon Domain." Hushi was startled. Yet when she tried to figure out where this place was and turned around, it was only to find that there was a seemingly endless dark passage behind her. From a distance, it seemed as if it led to the Underworld. As soon as the cowardly Dandan saw this, he immediately threw himself into Hushi's arms, shivering as he said, "Mother, is this the gate of the Underworld? I'm scared." This little guy's IQ wasn't very high, but his memory was particularly good. Having heard ghost stories, he clearly remembered something like Yellow Springs 1, Hell, the Gate of Hell, and Old Lady Meng's Soup 2. Unfortunately, his courage happened to be particularly small. Hushi was also somewhat tense, as things seemed to have exceeded her expectations and control. What was that smelly old man up to? Right at this moment, Hushi abruptly heard the old beggar man's happy laugh in her mind, and he cheekily said, "Baby doll, didn't you say that if you pay respects towards me as a master, you wouldn't get any benefits? Here, I'll give you the benefits now." 1. In ancient Chinese religion, The underworld was called Yellow Springs, Huangchuan, possibly a reference to the ubiquitous Yellow River. The Yellow Springs were not a hell, where one suffers retribution, but rather a place where the souls of the departed were supposed to reside. The destination of the white soul, Pa. Tu Mengpa is the Lady of Forgetfulness in Chinese mythology. Mengpa serves in Diyu, the Chinese realm of the dead, in the 10th court. It is her task to ensure that souls who are ready to be reincarnated do not remember their previous life or their time in hell. To this end, she collects herbs from various earthly ponds and streams to make her 5-flavored tea of forgetfulness, which is then given to each soul to drink before they leave Diyu. The brew induces instant and permanent amnesia, and all memories of their other lives is lost. Having been purged of all previous sins and knowledge, the dead spirit is sent to be reborn in a new earthly incarnation, and the cycle begins again. Occasionally people are able to avoid drinking the brew, resulting in past life memories surfacing in children. Chapter 212. The Secret Territory opens benefit? Just for her to benefit, he had to send her to such a ghost place like this? Hushi unhappily said, "Where am I? And why on earth did you send me to such an odd place?" Ha ha ha, such a stinky girl, unable to appreciate the value of things. Didn't you see all the martial artists waiting outside Song Mountain? They're all rushing towards here. The old beggar man laughed loudly, then continued. That's right, behind this door is the sealed dragon domain. The secret territory that everyone is looking for. The greeting gift that this old man has given to you is pretty good, right? Quickly go inside and find your destiny. The sealed dragon domain is the secret territory? Hushi turned pale. Smelly old man, didn't I say that I didn't want to enter the secret territory? Hey, oi. She no longer heard any voice in her mind. Only Dandan's echoing sobs reached her ears. Hushi's mouth twitched, and after quickly sizing up that endlessly dark passage, she had no choice but to give up. So turning back around, she tried pushing the iron door open. At first Hushi had thought it would be impossible to push open such a mountain-like iron door with only her own strength. But who would have thought just when her hand touched the carved pattern on the door, that a sudden burst of golden light would shine brightly before her eyes. The entrance that was originally an unremarkable gray color momentarily lit up, as if it had electricity running through it. All the carved lines on it were glowing a bright gold, lighting up the narrow passage she was in for a moment. Dandan covered his eyes with his small hooves, and leaned against Hushi's shoulder as he shouted, "Mother, we're going to enter the door of hell? Will there be a lot of ghosts inside?" Hushi ignored him as she was watching as the golden light finally disperse, and the tightly closed iron door slowly open with a creak. In between the iron door, there was a gap only big enough for one person to pass through. This time, Hushi no longer hesitated as she directly stepped forward and walked through the gap. Since Hushi had now entered the secret territory, she was unaware that the moment the iron door had opened, the once quiet Song Mountain suddenly issued a violent rumble, followed by the entire mountain peak shaking. Countless crushed stones tumbled from the top of mountain, while beasts incessantly stampeded, and ash rained down from the west side of the mountain. Abruptly, an innumerable number of golden lights exploded into the sky. Moreover, following Song Mountain's non-stop shaking, these rays of light continued to spread until they completely covered all of Tsong Mountain. At the base of Tsong Mountain, all of the calmly waiting martial artists sitting in meditation soon started a commotion, one by one standing up to take a look. Only, they were shocked to see that erupting out of Tsong Mountain were thousands of golden lights, and slowly, a pale golden arched door was revealed in the lights. The peak of that arched door extended higher than they could see. Standing tall and proud, it seemed to reach through the clouds. This door was so eye-catching and humongous that people within several hundred kilometers of it could see its presence. What's going on here? All of the waiting martial artists' faces showed their shock. Why would a door abruptly appear at this time? Secret territory. The secret territory has opened. Someone exclaimed. Quickly go and inform the sect elders. The secret territory has opened. In just a moment, the base of Tsong Mountain erupted in complete chaos. In Yanjing Imperial Palace, The Supreme Emperor's throne incessantly shook along with the earth's tremors. On the throne, a middle-aged man quickly stood up, his eyes staring at the dazzling golden lights in astonishment. "Someone come. What has happened?" Answering Emperor, "It's Song Mountain. Song Mountain started the earthquake, and the door of emptiness has been raised." Song Mountain? The door of emptiness? Does this mean that the secret territory has opened? However, isn't it too early? The expression on Shangguan Wenji's face became one of uncertainty, and it was a while before he gravely said, "Immediately send people over to enter the secret territory, and make sure to get all the treasures inside. Granted that if we can't obtain anything, we absolutely can't allow other people to obtain anything either. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Emperor." Chapter 213 Greedy People. Nalan Manor. At this moment, Nalan Zhengze was respectfully sitting in a seat slightly lower than an elderly man, quietly saying, "I've already received reliable information. This time, only Gold Core Stage and Nascent Soul Stage martial artists will be able to enter the Sealed Dragon domain. Great Elder, we of the Nalan family hope to seize the treasures from the secret territory, and it's only you who are able to help us." The person who Nalan Zhengze called Great Elder was a long-bearded old man. He looked about 35 to 36 years old, but his hair and beard were completely white, while his wisdom and high cultivation base were visible in his gaze. This person was called Nalan Yanming. His cultivation base was currently the highest amongst the Nalan family, and he was also the Nalan family's prestigious Great Elder. Listening to Nalan Zhengze's words, a cold, sharp blade flashed in Nalan Yanming's eyes as he unhurriedly said, "The ancient pill prescription, primal chaos inheritance, millennium spirit fruit. No matter which one, all are priceless treasures. As long as we can get these things, our Nalan family will be able to stabilize our place in Jinling Kingdom. But it's not determined yet which expert will enter the secret territory. I'm afraid that I might not be able to take advantage of them." Nalan Zhengze slightly laughed, and fished out 2 bottles of medicinal pills from his chest pocket. "Therefore, I've prepared these 2 bottles of medicinal pills for Great Elder. One bottle contains devouring spirit powder. It's able to corrode the meridians and spiritual power of a Gold Core Stage martial artist. And the remaining bottle contains a miracle elixir capable of stimulating Great Elder's cultivation base within an amount of short time. Believe me, if you have these 2 bottles of medicinal pills, you will be able to gain the upper hand in the secret territory." Nalan Yanming's eyes lit up, and he quickly took the 2 bottles of medicinal pills. Yet just as he was about to open the lid on one of the bottles, the ground suddenly started to violently shake. Dust from the ceiling rained down on them, while the antiques on the shelf clattered loudly. "What's going on? The Earth Dragon has freed itself?" Nalan Zhengze asked in bewilderment. "Not good." Nalan Yanming's complexion changed, and his figure flashed as he dashed out of the room. At this moment, the earthquake was becoming more severe. The street and public square filled with panic-stricken and shocked people. They all looked in the direction of Song Mountain, where there were continuous bursts of harsh light. Inquiring voices could be heard here and there, while everyone wore an expression of dread. Suddenly, someone pointed in the direction of Song Mountain and shouted, "Look, what is that?" Everyone looked over to the direction that person was pointing in, only to see twinkling golden lights appear as the door of emptiness slowly rose. Standing tall and imposing between heaven and earth, it was like a giant looking down at tiny ants occupying Yanjing City. "Secret territory. That's the door to enter the secret territory," someone exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. "Song Mountain's secret territory has finally opened." As soon as these words were spoken, Yanjing City was immediately in an uproar. The long heard about Sealed Dragon Domain and the legendary treasures found in Song Mountain both had been a hot topic these past few days. Just thinking of the chance to gain all the treasure hidden in the secret territory caused every martial artist's eyes to shine brightly. This kind of treasure, as long as one was able to take possession of just the tiniest bit of it, that would be a meteoric achievement in one's career. Who didn't have such a dream? Who didn't long for such a great opportunity? After only a moment's hesitation, A crowd of greedy people began to frantically rush towards Tsang Mountain. Their eyes were shining brightly and their faces were flushed, all of them deluding themselves with dreams of grandeur. At the base of Tsang Mountain, on the west side, a woman dressed in white and covered with a veil gazed at the groups of people rushing about on their flying swords from a distance. Her mouth revealed the traces of a cold sneer. People are always easily blinded by greed and desire. Focusing only on possessing the secret territory's treasures, they've forgotten that just based on their own ability that they would first have to make the unreasonable request of surviving in the secret territory. Chapter 214. The Door of Emptiness. Little sister Lianing is kind-hearted. Standing beside the woman dressed in white, a man dressed in purple robes laughed and said, "In my opinion, since this group of ants is incapable of recognizing their own abilities, it would only serve them right if they were to die. In Miluo continent, the weak are prey for the strong. They simply don't have any other value. If they have delusions of snatching away things that aren't rightfully theirs, then that's their own fault for overestimating their capabilities." Feng Lianing slightly laughed, but otherwise didn't respond to the man in purple robes. Instead, she gazed at the handsome young man beside her. "Brother Yu, why do you think the secret territory has opened so early?" Nangong Yu shook his head, and as he stared up at the door of emptiness bathed in a golden light, his eyes flashed. The man in purple robes laughed. "Who cares why it's opened so early? No matter what the reason, we must be the ones to get the things found inside. Little sister, when we find the treasure, you get to choose what you want first." A bright and beautiful smile plastered itself across Feng Lianying's face. "You promising alone doesn't count. What if by chance brother Yu and the other don't agree? What's the relationship between you and Nangong? How could he not agree?" The man in purple robes laughed as he spoke, but his tone was somewhat sour as he looked at Feng Lianing, and implied more than friendship. "As for the rest, Tian Rui is your biological brother. How could he not yield to you his baby sister?" Hearing this, Feng Lianing smiled bashfully and secretly glanced at Nangong Yu. But Nangong Yu just looked at the sky, his expression grave. Feng Lianying's heart sunk, and a dark light appeared in her eyes. Standing beside her, Ziyan observed the mood of her young Miss Fall. So suddenly moving closer to her ear, she whispered, "Miss, I wonder whether or not that young master she will also join in the fray of entering the door of emptiness. His cultivation base is only at chi refining stage, so if he goes in, most likely he will die on the peripheral of the secret territory. Perhaps he won't even make it to the borders of the sealed dragon domain. If he were to die inside." A corner of Feng Lianying's mouth stretched into a shallow arc. As this was happening, the beautiful eyes of the man in purple robes, which were like tranquil lakes reflecting the sun, watched as her expression became blank. At this moment, a man's deep and cold voice was heard. "Nangong, everything is ready, we can enter now." At this time, Hushi had just stepped foot into the sealed dragon domain's most inner enchantment, and was completely unaware that because of her, the secret territory had opened earlier than planned. After barely entering the narrow crack in the door, Hushi abruptly felt like her body was being ripped apart and twisted. Even her soul seemed to be squeezed out. When she could finally stand firmly with great difficulty, she slowly opened her eyes, and she couldn't help but be stunned by the scene before her. Here is a strange mountain forest? Hushi's feet stepped on the dark green lawn. In front of her, there was a verdant and lush ancient tree forest, while extending into the distance, she could make out a river and mountain peaks. There even appeared to be pure white snow covering the summits. Hushi turned around and discovered that there was no longer an iron door behind. Rather, there was now a towering cliff. Growing across the surface of the cliff were hundreds of brightly colored, fragrant flowers. What is this place? How come there were all kinds of landforms centralized in one area? Especially the soil and stones of the cliff. Many different kinds of colors were visible, so it seemed like several different mountains jumbled together. Hushi took a few steps towards the direction of the forest. The trees in here were all very tall, and all extremely rich in spiritual energy. Looking into the distance at the clouds and mist curling around the tops of the trees with the bright contrasting colors, Hushi thought that it looked as beautiful as a fairyland. Dandan had already hopped down from Hushi's shoulder, and striding a few steps forward with his short hooves, he inhaled deeply through his small nose and said, "Mother, the smell in here is so nice, there's something delicious in here." Chapter 215 Golden Bodhi Tree. He had barely finished speaking, when his eyes suddenly lit up, and he ran towards the forest. He was going so fast that Hushi had to use all her strength just to keep up. Dandan ran for a quarter of an hour before abruptly stopping, allowing Hushi to heave a sigh of relief. Yet just when she was about to tell him not to go running off again, she noticed something in front of her and her expression suddenly changed. Less than 5 meters away from Dandan and herself, there was a golden python curled up motionlessly. Golden python. The golden python was a 6th-ranked magical beast. Amongst the existence of magical beasts, it belonged to a powerful class, its strength equal to that of a nascent soul stage martial artist. A magical beast of such rank, how could it appear here? Hushi sucked in a cold breath, and slowly turned around to retreat. What a joke! With her current level being gold core stage, she would barely be able to hit him. Against a nascent soul stage golden python, she would instantly lose. However, just as Hushi was about to run away, she noticed that Dandan had returned to his original appearance, and with his small and short legs, he ran straight towards the golden python. Hushi's eyes widened in shock, and she stared blankly as she watched her small and foolish pet clinging to the giant snake's body. Releasing a hiss, the golden python started rolling its body and continuously turning over. What the fuck? Is that even possible? Hushi watched as Dandan climbed past the golden python's spiraling body and ran towards the base of a tree. Holding on to the thick and solid trunk, he started to climb up it. Hushi followed Dandan's movements with her gaze and was once again shocked. It unexpectedly turned out to be a golden Bodhi tree. Compared to the Yuanyang fruit, this tree's high-level spiritual fruit simply couldn't be found anywhere on Miluo continent. Even the All Living Things record said that the Bodhi tree only bloomed once every 1,000 years, and that it took 10,000 years to bear any fruit. For a Bodhi tree to become a golden Bodhi tree, it had to have bloomed and borne fruit at least 10 times, causing its worth to be beyond measure. A single Bodhi fruit didn't only enhance a martial artist's cultivation speed, but was able to strengthen a martial artist's dantian and meridians, while it also helped to purify their spiritual power. As for the effects of a golden Bodhi fruit, it could be said that the advantages were in defiance of the natural order of things. Hushi's heart leapt. If she were to plant the golden Bodhi tree in her space, then wouldn't she be able to get rich? However, at this time, Dandan had rapidly been climbing up the golden Bodhi tree, plucking the golden Bodhi fruit, and then stuffing each and every one into his mouth. He also stuffed the last fruit into his mouth even though it had yet to ripen. A corner of Hushi's mouth twitched. This little good-for-nothing glutton, how could he eat this much again? Her golden Bodhi tree and dreams of getting rich were just completely destroyed by him. Hushi no longer hesitated. With power fluctuating from her body as she used her qing gong, and not her spiritual power, she lightly landed at the base of the golden Bodhi tree. Then using her hand, she gently knocked on the roots of the tree. In the blink of an eye, the golden Bodhi tree disappeared and Dandan fell from midair. His stomach distended from eating so much. As he landed on the ground with a thump, he looked up at Hushi with a foolish yet adorable expression. Hushi pointed at his small head, and just as she was about to scold him, her expression suddenly changed. Grabbing Dandan and throwing him into her space, she then leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding a fatal blow from the golden python. The golden python released a furious snarl, its big blood-red eyes staring menacingly at Hushi. And as the venom dripping down its fangs landed on the ground, a sizzling noise could be heard as the ground corroded. Why would Hushi dare to stay? Condensing the spiritual power within her body to her feet, she then rapidly ran away as fast as lightning. But no matter how fast her speed, the golden python was even faster. Obviously its body was gigantic, yet it could somehow still move freely amongst the forest. With a fishy stench, black venom unceasingly hurtled towards Hushi, and wherever the venom landed, not even a single blade of grass was spared. Chapter 216. Dragon's Cry. The spiritual power within Hushi's body was slowly depleting, and realizing that the golden python was about to catch her, she decided to do something unexpected. So using her left leg, she abruptly kicked off a large tree and twisted in the air, pouncing towards the golden python. The golden python apparently didn't think that such a petty and low human, who would steal its golden Bodhi tree, was actually worth its time, and would have the strength to attack back. So for a moment it stared blankly in shock. And it was exactly at this moment, when the golden python was frozen, that Hushi all of a sudden jumped on top of its head, fiercely stabbing down on one of its blood-red eyes. However, the golden python reacted faster than Hushi had imagined it would. Just as her dagger was about to pierce its target, the golden python promptly closed its eyes. The dagger, capable of cutting iron, as if it was clay, stabbed at the golden python's eyelid. Unfortunately, it failed to pierce its eye, and Hushi only managed to leave a shallow cut. The golden python let out a furious hiss, and fiercely shaking its head, it roughly flung Hushi's petite body away from itself. Next, it released a stream of rock-corroding venom. Throughout his long lifespan, he had never seen such a brazen tiny human. While he was in the middle of cultivating, this human had not only stolen all of his golden Bodhi fruit, she had even stolen the entire golden Bodhi tree. For this crime she deserved to die 10,000 deaths. She thought she could injure me, the king of pythons, with just her small dagger. What a joke. The golden python abruptly stopped shaking its head, while pain and shock were visible in its eyes. The small scratch that Hushi had made, in a speed visible to the naked eye, suddenly started to rot and turn gray. Next, the eyeball itself began to blacken and shrivel up until finally, all that remained was an empty eye socket. The golden python had been rolling around on the ground in nonstop pain. Yet suddenly, a powerful wave of spiritual power unexpectedly burst out of its body. At the same time, the golden python's tail swept towards Hushi. Hushi was still dizzy from being previously thrown off, so unfortunately, she was too late to dodge the tail. When the golden python's tail, filled with strong spiritual power, knocked into her, her body immediately flew into the air, before heavily crashing against an ancient tree. She felt like her internal organs were in so much pain from being shaken about, that she couldn't breathe. And as blood trickled out from a corner of her mouth, it slowly dripped down onto a jade ring. That jade ring was the thing that Dandan had received from the old beggar man. And when Hushi's blood landed on it, a glaringly bright light abruptly burst from her body. Then, it was like the golden python's swaying head suddenly hit a transparent screen. A loud bang echoed in the area, and the golden python's body severely flew backwards. The next moment, an earth-shattering dragon's cry resounded over the entire secret territory. It was as if an ancient legend had once again begun. Hushi felt cool liquid flowing down her throat. This liquid was sweet and aromatic. Once it entered her body, it instantly changed into strong spiritual power, and flowed throughout her body. This in turn made the areas of her body that were burning hot due to pain immediately cool down, and become comfortable. Mother, are you alright? Don't scare Dandan. Hushi drowsily opened her eyes, and the first thing she saw was Dandan's small tear-streaked face. In his left hand he held a slice of golden Bodhi fruit, and in his right he held a cup of spiritual spring water. It was apparent that he had been feeding her both as he tried to see which one could save his mother. Hushi slowly stood up and discovered that she was actually in her space. The golden Bodhi tree had now been planted in the ancient rhyme spiritual field, while the few remaining golden Bodhi fruit had become plump from the nourishment of such rich spiritual energy. After checking her own body, she found that the injury she sustained due to the golden python's attack had now completely recovered. Unfortunately, she didn't know whether it was thanks to the effects of the golden Bodhi fruit, or the effects of the spiritual spring water. The experiences this time in the secret territory had made Hushi become somewhat nervous. If she were to casually run into any more spiritual beasts that were 6th rank or above, someone of her skill set wouldn't be in any way equipped to handle them. Chapter 217. Golden Dragon. That deranged and smelly old man. Did he really want to give her a greeting gift, or did he want to kill her? Hushi grit her teeth as she cursed that smelly old beggar man. and after ordering Dandan to remain in her space, her consciousness then returned to her corporeal body. But once Hushi returned from her space, she was shocked at the scene that greeted her. Before her eyes wasn't the forest from her memories, rather, there was now an absolutely empty room. In this room, there were several arched doors with surfaces that resembled mirrors. At this moment, they were all broken and emitting random bursts of silvery light. Laying lifeless on the ground at Hushi's feet was the golden python's body. One of its eyes was wide open and filled with dread, while its remaining eye was corroded down to the bone by Hushi's poison. Grabbing the golden python's tail and slightly lifting it up, Hushi was shocked to discover that every one of the python's bones were unexpectedly fractured, as if it was forcibly beaten by something. She then recalled that before she fainted, she had heard the sound of a dragon's cry and a glaring white light. In the end, who was it that saved her? Hushi took the golden python into her space. This was the fresh corpse of a 6th-rank spiritual beast. Its skin and venomous fangs could be made into a powerful weapon, while its meat was a rare ingredient used in refining specialist supplements. This was the perfect opportunity to make use of the python in 3 ways. After sorting out the golden python, Hushi began to examine the strange room she now found herself in. The room had no ceiling, so a few gray clouds were visible in the sky. At this moment, the clouds were constantly condensing and spreading, causing a shadow to form. Hushi was baffled at the sight of the forming shadow, when suddenly, a burst of glaring golden light exploded out from the center of it. Following that, something fell on her head with a thump, and the skin on her face felt icy smooth to the touch. What was that? Hushi was often described as having lightning-fast reflexes, so she managed to quickly grab the thing on her head and held it up in front of her eyes. When she was able to clearly see the thing in her hand, a surprised expression spread across her face. Is this a snake? This tiny golden thing that was no bigger than the thickness of her thumb was a snake? No, wait. Since when did horns grow on the top of a snake? What actually is this thing? Just then, the tiny snake in her hand slowly opened its eyes and revealed a pair of golden purple irises. In the beginning, the tiny snake appeared weak and powerless, but after it clearly saw Hushi, it slowly said, "Brat, are you the person who helped me to undo my seal?" Brat? This little guy that was only the size of her palm actually dared to call her a brat with such a sweet voice? Hushi was dumbfounded and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What sort of thing are you? The tiny golden snake's eyes suddenly opened wide in a glare, and it angrily said, "Audacious brat. I'm the guardian beast of this secret territory, the divine golden dragon. You're only a small foundation establishment stage martial artist, and yet you dare to call me a thing." Golden dragon? Oh, so it turns out that this guy was a small dragon. No wonder horns were growing on its head. But compared with a majestic dragon that her imagination conjured up, this little thing had a puny and smelly appearance. The little golden dragon shook its small head and asked again, "I'll ask once more, was it you who helped me to undo my seal?" "What seal?" The little golden dragon's body shimmied, and suddenly, a jade ring appeared in Hushi's hand. With a glance, Hushi recognized that this was the jade ring that the old beggar man had given her. But now, the once dark green jade ring had abruptly turned a half-gold half-red color. The little golden dragon sniffed the jade ring, then sniffed Hushi's body, before it snorted and said, "As expected, it's you, this useless little brat, who helped to undo the seal on this king. As such, this king unfortunately has no other choice but to reluctantly accept you." Reluctantly accept me? Reluctantly accept me for what? Chapter 218. Conclusion of a contract. The little golden dragon raised up half of his body and scowled at Hushi. "From now on, I have decided to let you become my master. In the future you are mine, the divine golden dragon's master. How is it, are you happy now? Why don't you quickly kneel and thank this king for his kindness?" A corner of Hushi's mouth twitched, and she became speechless as she looked at the tiny snake in her palm that could easily be killed with just a slap. Shaking her hand, the little golden dragon fell from her palm and landed on the ground with a plop. He cut a sorry figure as he stared up at Hushi from the ground. Towering over the little snake, Hashi looked down at him and sneered. I see that you've become foolish since you were sealed away for such a long time. You want me to thank you for your kindness? Believe me, I can step on you and squish you to death instead. Audacious mortal, do you know what this king's identity is? I'm a divine golden dragon, the highest class of dragon from the dragon race. The little golden dragon was furious and stomped on the ground in frustration, but when he noticed that Hashi was refusing to acknowledge him, and was instead turning around to leave, he panicked. He'd only been unsealed mere moments ago, so his strength was still weak. He wasn't even yet able to defend himself against a low-level spiritual beast. If he wanted to survive until maturity, then there was only one way, and that was to establish a contract with a human. He had been waiting in this secret territory for 1,000 years, waiting for a martial artist capable of establishing a contract with him to come. If he were to let her escape, then there was every chance that he would have to wait another 1,000 years before the next suitable martial artist would come along. All of a sudden, the little golden dragon's eyes flickered with desperation, and launching his body into the air with a swoosh, he wrapped himself around Hashi's wrist. Then, without waiting for her to react, he opened his tiny mouth and fiercely bit into one of her delicate fingers. Hashi's reaction speed was also extremely fast, and just moments after she had been bitten, she had already ripped the little golden dragon off and thrown him away from her. But it was too late. Golden light suddenly radiated from her body, and a pattern of fine gold lines appeared engraved around the bite mark on her finger. After flashing brightly for a moment, the pattern then disappeared without a trace, as if it had never even been there. Yet, if one were to use their divine sense to examine her body closely, it was possible to see a golden pattern within her dantian. The little golden dragon rolled about on the ground and burst into a fit of laughter. We've already concluded a master and spirit pet equality contract. Now you won't ever be able to abandon this king. Hashi waved her finger in the air, even though the wound on it had already healed. Then, with a gloomy expression, she unhurriedly made her way towards the little golden dragon. The little golden dragon was intimidated by her imposing manner, and shrinking his body as much as he could, he immediately raised his voice and said, Don't you dare hit me. We've already concluded a master and spirit pet equality contract. Due to the contract, if you use any martial artist techniques on me, you'll also experience any injuries that I do. Hashi lifted the little golden dragon up and pinched it as she sneered. You think I need to use a martial artist technique on you to beat you up? Are you joking? Believe it or not, all I need to do is slowly peel your skin away, then slice your flesh into thin strips, and I'll have succeeded in making 8 treasures snake soup. The little golden dragon stared at the dark smile on Girl's face and became terrified, his courage freezing with his fear. What? She's obviously only a useless foundation establishment stage martial artist. Yet why did he feel so much dread when he faced her, compared to when he faced his previous masters? The little golden dragon had always gotten away with bullying his previous masters, but now, Hashi's intimidation tactics were more than enough to make him shiver with fear. His loftiness immediately disappeared without a trace as he pleaded. Master, don't get angry. Now that the master and spirit pet contract with me has already concluded, you're able to obtain countless benefits. Hashi raised an eyebrow as she looked at him with distrust. What benefits? The little golden dragon saw that there was an opportunity to placate her, and he promptly became excited. Twisting his tiny body to and fro on Hashi's hand, he rapidly began to chatter away. Master, the reason you entered this secret territory was to hunt for treasure, right? I'll tell you a secret. This secret territory was made for me by my previous master, so all the treasures in this secret territory belong to me. It's up to me who I wish to grant them to. Hashi looked at him suspiciously. With just your words alone, why should I believe you? Chapter 219. Inheritance, what's wrong with me? The little golden dragon's body twisted in anger. I said that I'm a divine golden dragon. If you don't believe me, then look for yourself. After saying this, a fine golden ball of light abruptly shone out of the little golden dragon's mouth. Next, it floated down and lit up with a reflective surface in front of its body. Suddenly, The surface of this mirror-like ball that was shrouded by a golden light began to ripple. Then, as the ripples began to spread outwards, the scene of a desert slowly became visible. In this desert scene, countless giant fire ants were attempting to devour many martial artists who were screaming as they fled in fear. Amongst the martial artists, there was one that was slower than the rest. And unfortunately, this martial artist happened to stumble, allowing the giant fire ants the opportunity to catch up to him. In the blink of an eye, the giant fire ants converged on him as one, completely devouring his flesh until nothing but chalky white bones remained. The little golden dragon was clearly pleased with himself as he said. This king's previous master was very powerful. In this secret territory, he created various kinds of locations with different atmospheres, and every location is unusual as each one has a different trial. The further in the secret territory a martial artist explores, the crueler and more severe the trials become. Of course, the greater the trial, the greater the treasure hidden in that location will be. Take this group of martial artists for example. It's obvious that they lack strength, and yet they still dared to enter the third domain of the secret territory. Blinded by their greed, it's only natural that they would die. The little golden dragon spat out several more golden light balls, allowing Hushi to see what was currently happening in other locations across the secret territory. These golden light balls showed miniature copies of locations in the secret territory. Each scene would show things like deserts, forests, marshlands, and also glaciers. Furthermore, every location seemed to be filled with some sort of dangerous secret, as from time to time a martial artist would appear, only to perish not long after in a violent disaster. Amongst these martial artists, there were even a few experts at the peak of Meridian's stage. Although, Hushi was somewhat puzzled. Why did it seem like her experiences were different compared to everyone else's? Even though she was the one who had found the golden python, it clearly wasn't as bad a trial as what others seemed to be dealing with now. The little golden dragon seemed to know what Hushi was thinking, and appeared proud as he said, "Master, you directly entered the inner core of the secret territory through the sealed dragon domain door. Of course you wouldn't need to pass through those trials." After saying that, he couldn't help but be smug as he said, "Hee, so how is it? This secret territory is awesome, right?" Hushi stroked her chin as she asked, "You said this secret territory belongs to you?" "Of course." The little golden dragon proudly wagged his tail. "Then can you get the hidden treasures for me?" The little golden dragon's figure stiffened, before his tiny claws started waving in the air. Unfortunately, that's out of the question for the time being. My previous master said that he had left the treasure hidden in this secret territory for me, Luo Continent's chosen person. Even if you're now my master and want those treasures, you still have to pass a trial." Seeing the contempt on Hushi's face, the little golden dragon immediately felt that his dignity was wounded and promptly shouted, "But I know where the most precious treasures are. I can take you there." Hushi blandly asked, "Oh, then what is the most precious treasure found in this secret territory?" "It's me, of course." The little golden dragon didn't have a trace of modesty as he used his claws to pat his chest. Hushi's expression remained unmoved and caused the little golden dragon to feel wronged, so he poked a claw at her as he said, "Originally, I was the most useful. Anyway, apart from me, the most precious treasure here is certainly my previous master's inheritance. My previous master's inheritance is on the level of being divine. There's only one in all of Luo Continent." "Inheritance? What kind of inheritance?" Hushi inquired. "Ah," the little golden dragon suddenly exclaimed. "A group of people just entered the inner core of this secret territory. It'll certainly be because they want to snatch the inheritance for themselves. Quickly, we have to go to Zijin Palace." Chapter 220, Determination. Hushi glanced at what the little golden dragon was looking at, and saw a woman dressed in a white muslin dress. The woman's face was covered with a veil as with a burst of spiritual power. She landed on the patch of grass that Hushi had previously been standing on. Her beautiful eyes gleamed like water reflecting sunlight as she examined her surroundings, and as she turned to look in the direction of the forest, a determined expression appeared on her face. Just then, a gentle breeze reached the woman and lifted her veil, revealing an elegant, exquisite, and cold mien. It's Feng Lianing. Hushi's brows rose in surprise, and suddenly, before her eyes, a towering and majestic palace appeared before her. The entire structure of this palace was enveloped by a purple light, and next to it, countless silver bells hung around an octagonal pavilion. When the wind swept past, a sweet, melodious sound could be heard. The little golden dragon looked at the forest behind him, and relief spread across his face. Fortunately, she's only just arrived at the verdant golden forest, so there's still some time left. Master, quickly go in. You must pass the test to receive the inheritance before she comes. Hushi's deep eyes glanced back at the forest, before she then walked into Zijin Palace. While standing in the forest, Feng Lianing held a jade tablet in her hand, the corners of her mouth showing the hints of a cold smile. This jade tablet was a treasure that her master had given to her before she departed. With this jade tablet, she had been able to pass through the door of emptiness and bypass layer upon layer of restrictions, until finally, she had been delivered to the inner core of the secret territory. While other people were still fighting for their lives in the outer layers of the secret territory, she was now close to the treasure hidden in the secret territory's inner core. In addition to the inheritance hidden in Zijin Palace, she was also determined to get a treasure her master had told her about, a priceless golden Bodhi tree. As long as she was able to get her hands on a few golden Bodhi fruit, she would be able to immediately advance her cultivation base. That's right, when she was finally able to give one golden Bodhi fruit to Brother Yu, he would certainly be very grateful towards her. Thinking of Nangong Yu, a shy yet happy smile appeared on Feng Lianying's face. Unfortunately, even though she had followed the directions on the tablet to the location of the golden Bodhi tree, when she arrived, she was shocked to discover that it had disappeared. Even the golden python that her master had warned her was guarding the golden Bodhi tree. Both of them had completely disappeared. How could the golden python and the golden Bodhi tree both have disappeared without a trace? How could this be? Abruptly Feng Lianing noticed something, and crouching down, she lightly stroked a few marks on the ground. This is human blood? So someone came, defeated the golden python, and took away the golden Bodhi tree? However, how was this possible? The golden Bodhi tree needs to be planted in divine soil to survive. If it's planted into ordinary soil, it will immediately wither and die. In the end, which wretch stole the golden Bodhi fruit? Even going so far as to destroy the entire golden Bodhi tree, since divine soil is impossible to find in Miluo continent. Feng Lianing gnashed her teeth as she looked at the empty hole where the tree had been. Suddenly, her expression changed. These marks are new, so obviously someone came here just a moment ago. In that case, wouldn't the person who stole the golden Bodhi tree also be aiming to snatch away the Zijin Palace inheritance? Thinking of this, Feng Lianing suddenly froze. Before her figure was as swift as a phantom as she rapidly flew forwards. She was thoroughly prepared when she entered the secret territory. She even had a way to deal with a high-level martial artist on nascent soul stage. The golden Bodhi fruit and Zijin Palace inheritance were the two things she was determined to win. For the golden Bodhi fruit, it was first come first served. So even though she felt distressed at the thought of someone else having them, with her skills, sooner or later she would find a method to force that person to spit them out. However, there was only one Zijin Palace inheritance. If it was snatched by someone, even if she were to kill that scoundrel, she still wouldn't be able to get it back. Therefore, she must hurry and catch up to that hateful thief before he receives the inheritance and kill him. Chapter 221, Zijin Palace. As soon as Hushi entered Zijin Palace, she couldn't help but crinkle her eyebrows. From the outside it seemed like Zijin Palace was very imposing and majestic, but once you had walked through the entrance, you were presented with an absolutely empty room. After entering, the entire room was plainly visible. It was approximately only 100 square meters in size, and there didn't appear to be any stairs or doors leading into other rooms. It seemed that Zijin Palace's interior didn't match the exterior. The most eye-catching thing in the room was an earth-based 8 trigram engraved in the center of the room on the floor. Arranged in the center of it was a huge purple-gold furnace. From its outward appearance, it appeared somewhat old-fashioned and unremarkable. Yet at first glance, Hushi had felt that this furnace must be 100 times more precious than the furnace in Hell King Manor. It seemed that the owner of Zijin Palace was an alchemist master? So the inheritance here is also related to alchemy? Thinking of this, Hushi's interest rose a bit. Although she had the overflowing cauldron pill scripture in her hands, many of the spiritual plants required for refining couldn't be found in Miluo continent. In fact, most were unheard of. Moreover, apart from the overflowing cauldron pill scripture, she didn't actually have any refining tools. If the inheritance of Zijin Palace included treasures like this furnace, then that's great. The little golden dragon on Hushi's arm shook his head, and with a proud and arrogant expression on his face he said, "Little girl, do you see it? This is what countless martial artists yearn for. They all dream of obtaining the divine-level inheritance of Zijin Palace. If you want to know how to begin the acceptance test, you have to properly serve this king." The little golden dragon was still speaking when it suddenly grunted in shock, and looked at Hushi with an unreadable expression. A small, light golden ball of spiritual fire was flickering on Hushi's fingertips, before she then gently tossed it into the furnace. As soon as the light golden ball of spiritual fire entered the furnace, it began to spread along the furnace wall, forming an irregular circle. While this was happening, the color of the flame kept changing. The little golden dragon pointed at the ignited furnace, stuttering, How did you know you must release spiritual fire in there?" "No. That's wrong. Girl, aren't you only on foundation establishment stage? Since when has a martial artist on foundation establishment stage been able to release spiritual fire, and moreover, a very high-level spiritual fire? This is simply..." Really, at first he had only wanted to show off in front of this girl, to have her properly serve him, to make her beseech him for half a day, and then he would share a wisp of his dragon fire with her. Who knew she would unexpectedly open up the test of inheritance using spiritual fire that only a martial artist higher than foundation establishment stage should possess? In the end, what's the identity of this girl? Hushi ignored the little golden dragon's shock and approached the side of the furnace, checking on the state of the spiritual fire. But just as she was about to approach the furnace, abruptly, an intense purple light bloomed in front of her eyes. Soon after, a wisp of light gray smoke curled upwards from the center of the furnace towards her face. Hushi was shocked, and instinctively wanted to avoid it. Just then she heard the anxious shouts of the little golden dragon. "Hey, don't move. Stupid girl. That is the divine senses mark and represents the start of the test. Why on earth are you avoiding it?" Hushi stopped moving, and that wisp of light gray smoke quickly bore into the space between her eyebrows. The next moment, a powerful surge of spiritual power encircled her entire body, causing her consciousness to become blurry. And so the light gray smoke steadily continued to drift out of the furnace and surround Hushi. Gradually, it covered her whole body, making it seem like she was merging with the smoke. Chapter 222. Maha Inheritance. The little golden dragon's voice lost its proud and lovably annoying tone as it turned solemn, heavily resonating in Hushi's ears as it said, "Now that your mind has been imprinted with the previous owner's divine knowledge, the door to the trial has officially opened. Remember, when you accept the trial you have to concentrate, you cannot get distracted and don't stop. If the test is interrupted, it will lead to your cultivation base being broken off, and you will lose your life. Do you understand?" Hushi nodded slightly, and soon after slowly dispelled the distracting thoughts in her mind. Closing her eyes, she entered a meditation practice mode. And so the light gray smoke curling around Hushi's body slowly gathered together, gradually disappearing into her, as if completely melding with her. With that, she felt a mysteriously powerful force enter her body in a split second, causing her whole person to feel like it had been brought into a void. The spiritual power in her body began to move uncontrollably, and the empty space in her dantian where it had been stored slowly started to grow larger. Steadily, Her cultivation base that had already attained foundation establishment stage began to rise. Hushi felt delighted. She hadn't expected that the inheritance of Zijin Palace would unexpectedly enhance her cultivation base. Could it be that this inheritance didn't only involve alchemy and wasn't so simple? However, the next moment, Hushi's complexion suddenly changed. An intense pain came from her chest, and soon after, a pain that felt like someone was using a blade to cut into her meridians and forelimbs spread throughout her body in a flash. Next, Hushi felt like countless ants were creeping along her bones and biting her bone marrow. Such pain was beyond what an ordinary person would be able to endure. Arg! The sound of a groan slipped out from Hushi's mouth. She wanted to abandon her meditative position and examine what was happening with her body. Just then, a deep and magnetic voice leisurely spoke in her ears. If you desire to learn my Mahao inheritance, spirit, determination, innate talent, not a single one is indispensable. Little girl, your innate talent is pretty good, but it's still far from enough. If you want to receive my Mahao inheritance, you must first go through a burning heart and eroding bones, forged body and refined soul trial. This can be regarded as a beginner qualification. Burning heart and eroding bones? Forged body and refined soul? Hushi resisted the pain with great difficulty, and lifting her eyes, she was bewildered as she saw the slender figure of a man. The man's features were indistinguishable, but his body emitted a one-of-a-kind presence, like he had an immortal aura, one that could make people unconsciously want to lower their guard and bow in reverence. Hushi forced herself to concentrate with great difficulty, and looked at him as she asked, "Are you the master of this secret territory?" The man smiled faintly, shaking his head as he said, "I'm merely the remaining imprint from Zijin's soul, the divine knowledge, so I'm not really the master. Little girl, the pain of burning heart and forged body you experienced just a moment ago was merely the beginning, a small sample. The real pain is simply unimaginable. If you want to back out now, I can break off the inheritance imprint for you and you won't be hurt." Hushi frowned but didn't speak. The man sighed and said, "Ordinary people absolutely aren't able to endure the pain of burning heart and forged body. Little girl, since your cultivation base is only at foundation establishment stage, it's absolutely impossible for you to pass. This is the reason I set up restrictions so that only gold core stage martial artists or higher can enter the secret territory's inner core. If you choose to give up now, you won't lose anything, but once the trial starts, you will undoubtedly die if you fail to pass. Ordinary people can't endure it? But since when was she, Hushi, an ordinary person?" Thinking back, this was like the time when she was still training in the organization. She sat with her eyes closed in a cage, and she didn't eat or drink for 3 days and nights straight. During that time, she wrestled with her comrades and fought with wild animals, and when she came out, none of the flesh on her body was still intact. Chapter 223. Do your best at that time. In order to complete missions, she could motionlessly lurk in a wilderness full of poisonous insects for 7 days and nights, all for the purpose of striking the lethal blow. So would an insignificant pain like burning heart and forged body make her yield? Hushi sneered, her gaze suddenly becoming resolute. "What should I do to pass this trial?" The man seemed surprised for a moment, then he lightly laughed. "I really haven't seen such determined eyes for quite a while." After a pause, his smile vanished and he continued, "Passing this first trial is actually very simple. You only need to keep circulating your spiritual power around your body during this painful torture, until the trial ends. Remember, your spiritual power must keep moving. It can't stop even for a moment. If it stops, your bones and meridians will immediately be jolted apart and you'll die. Little girl, don't think that this kind of trial is very easy. With such a tremendous amount pain, your mind will be unable to concentrate, while your divine sense will also become weaker. If you want to control your spiritual power, you must use willpower and determination 100 times more focused than usual." "I understand." Hushi's face was tranquil as she nodded, not a trace of nervousness or fear in her eyes. A touch of admiration flashed in the man's eyes, and he lightly laughed as he said, "Since that's the case, then let's begin." The man's voice had just faded, when a portion of ice-cold spiritual power wrapped around Hushi's body. In a flash, intense pain assaulted her forelimbs, bones, and internal organs once again. However, this time, she clenched her jaws tightly, sat cross-legged, and closed her eyes as she steadily began to circulate her spiritual power. A corner of the man's mouth hooked up, and as the dense mist that covered his face dispersed, it revealed refined and handsome features. His pensive gaze landed on Hushi as she meditated cross-legged on the floor, and it was quite a long time before he chuckled. "Little girl, if you really are able to endure this trial, then there will be great benefits to your cultivation in the future. But really, the fact remains that passing this trial is extremely difficult, so do your best you." For a martial artist only on foundation establishment stage, enduring a trial of such severe torture of her willpower and determination will help wield her soul into something extremely stable. Afterwards, when she advances and encounters the demon inside her heart and bottlenecks, she will be able to break through with far less effort than other martial artists. A foundation establishment stage martial artist wants to obtain the Mahao inheritance? Interesting. The man's voice slowly faded out, and his figure gradually disappeared in the void. Only Hushi remained in the void, maintaining a meditative position as she endured the acutely painful torment. And so at this moment in Zijin Palace, the little golden dragon was lying on his stomach across Hushi's shoulders with a pleased expression on his face, as he continuously absorbed the overflow of spiritual power coming off of Hushi's body. He was using this spiritual power to flush the impurities out of his body, resulting in his previously dull dragon scales to slowly become glossy and shiny. On top of that, his small body, which had only been about the length of a finger, had also slightly lengthened. "You, this rotten egg, you deceived my mother. I'll beat you to death." Abruptly, the little golden dragon felt his body heavily hit by someone, and as he immediately stumbled and fell from Hushi's shoulder, he heard the voice of an angry child. The little golden dragon was lucky, and narrowly avoided the miserable fate of falling to the ground by using his tail and hooking it around Hushi's neck. As soon as he had steadied himself and looked up, he saw a pink little pig standing not too far away and glaring straight at him with anger in his eyes, as if he wanted to skin him alive. The little golden dragon saw this adorable little pig, and he didn't know why, but his anger at being hit was suddenly doused, like water being poured over fire. He subconsciously used a slightly gentler voice as he asked, "Where did you come from, little pig? How can you enter Zijin Palace? Don't you know it's very dangerous here?" Chapter 224. Conversation between spirit pets. "You're a bad guy. Don't fake kindness. I already know you deceived mother into accepting that something inheritance, so now mother is in pain. If mother dies, I'll bite you to death." "What?" This little pink pig was without a doubt Dandan. He and Hushi's life essences were connected. In Hushi's space he saw all that Hushi experienced, and although he couldn't feel what she was feeling, he still knew that something was wrong. He didn't quite understand the meaning of inheritance, but what he did know is that his mother was now in pain, a lot of pain, and he didn't want his mother in pain. The little golden dragon gaped in shock, and glancing at the pale complexion of Hushi as she meditated next to him, he suddenly had a realization and said, "You're this little girl's spirit pet? Ah, is her brain rotten? How could she accept such a useless little pig as her spirit pet?" One must know that once a martial artist accepts a spirit pet, he's accepting them for a lifetime. The spirit pet and the martial artist's life essence will then be strongly tied together, because the contract between a martial artist and a spirit pet consumes a lot of life essence. A martial artist wouldn't usually accept a useless animal as a spirit pet. He's the majestic golden dragon, and now he's unexpectedly become a spirit pet together with this little pig. This is too outrageous. Dandan isn't a little pig. Dandan was so angry that his both cheeks bulged. Then, after he pounced towards this hateful little dragon, he bit him on his tail. "Scoundrel, you better return my mother. Return my mother now. Ow! Don't bite, don't bite." The little golden dragon shouted and cried. He wanted to shake off this little pig, but since his tail was being bitten by him, he couldn't even use his techniques and could only shout, Your mother has a great opportunity, and if she can endure this trial, she can gain countless benefits. How are you not able to differentiate between good and bad? And instead, you prefer to question my good intentions." Dandan finally released the little golden dragon's tail. Yet his expression was one of profound sadness rather than relief. "But I heard that handsome big brother say that if mother doesn't pass the trial, that she will die." "What? Dandan doesn't want mother to die." "Rest assured, your mother is extremely powerful, so she'll definitely pass this trial. It isn't that difficult, so don't cry." Dandan rubbed at his tears as he happily asked, "Really? Mother will really be okay?" Of course." The little golden dragon felt guilty and averted his eyes, then laughed out loud. "I'm your mother's newly accepted spirit pet. Since master and spirit pet share both honor and disgrace, how could I deceive her?" Hearing that, Dandan immediately lit up with a happy smile, and he looked at the little golden dragon with a gaze brimming with kindness and adoration. The little golden dragon's conscience felt heavier, and he kept his gaze averted. What he didn't say was that the agreement sealed between himself and Hushi was an equality contract, and that he had only urgently signed the contract with Hushi because she had the abundant dragon ring. The abundant dragon ring had been necessary for him to be able to untie the seal, allowing him to leave that sealed space. As long as he could leave that sealed space, he would be able to slowly gain his strength back. In the future, when his strength surpassed Hushi's, it wouldn't be a difficult matter to undo the contract and dump her. And if Hushi died during their contracted time, the little golden dragon would naturally receive some damage, but it would only be a minor injury, with his cultivation base dropping a little. Later on, he could still find another person to sign a contract with him again. But seeing this adorable little pink pig's worshipping expression before his eyes, the little golden dragon suddenly thought that maybe becoming this little girl's spirit pet wasn't so bad. "Oh, how about I find a way that will allow her to pass the trial?" The little golden dragon coughed, but just as he was about to speak, his expression abruptly changed slightly and he whispered, "Don't speak, someone's coming." Chapter 225. Feng Lianying's jealousy. One dragon and one pig. Both of them quietly and rapidly moved to the doorframe and peeped out through a crack. What they saw was an elegant woman dressed in a white muslin skirt standing straight outside the palace, her bright eyes deeply examining Zijin Palace. The little golden dragon laughed mischievously and complacently said, "I don't know what methods that brat used to enter the secret territory's internal core, but it won't be so easy for her to enter Zijin Palace. If it weren't for me lending a hand to your mother, she absolutely wouldn't have been able to reach the entrance of Zijin Palace. So rest assured, for the time being she won't come inside. And by the time she does manage to enter, your mother's acceptance of the inheritance will already be completed." Receiving even more of Dandan's worshipping gaze, the little golden dragon triumphantly nodded his small head. However, the next moment, the proud look on his face turned into one of shock. Watching outside the palace, he noticed that the woman dressed in white took out the piece of a jade tablet, and as her red lips lightly moved, the jade tablet flew high in the air and suddenly released a blue light. In the next moment, the door of Zijin Palace unexpectedly opened itself without even a gust of wind, and the woman standing outside the palace laughed quietly as she slowly walked towards the door. The little golden dragon's complexion changed greatly, and with a strong burst of wind under his feet, two small bodies rose into the sky and quickly fled forwards, sliding to hide under a corner of the lower hem of Hushi's skirt. Feng Lianing retrieved the jade tablet, and as she faced the wide-open door of Zijin Palace, a smile full of relief appeared on her face. Since Zijin Palace hadn't disappeared, and the restriction on the door was still there, then that meant that the inheritance hadn't been taken away yet. That's great. Luckily she came fast enough. And fortunately she had this spell-breaking jade tablet in her hands that was given to her by Master, so she could easily enter Zijin Palace. Feng Lianing leisurely marched into the palace, and since the inside of the palace wasn't all that large, she could see what was currently happening with just a glance. Sitting cross-legged and concentrating beside Zijin Furnace was Hushi. Feng Lianying's eyes suddenly widened, and a mysterious light of disbelief flashed in her eyes. It's that stinky boy. Precisely the one who was extremely intimate with Brother Yu, that bullshit personal doctor. However, isn't his cultivation base just at Qi refining stage? How could he enter the internal core of the secret territory? And how could he even attempt to receive Zijin Palace's inheritance trial? Did he also use a secret method to bypass the restrictions of the secret territory? Who was it that helped him to come here and compete in gaining the inheritance with me? Don't tell me, was it Brother Yu? With this thought, Feng Lianying's elegant features twisted, her gaze brimming with hate and bitter resentment as she looked at Hushi. There were no lights or windows in Zijin Palace, but there was a kind of radiance in the palace that lit everything up. And at this moment, that radiance was shining upon Hushi's face. This light clearly revealed a flawless complexion before Feng Lianying's eyes. Lips the color of vermilion, eyebrows such a deep black that they seemed like they were painted, and skin as perfect as white jade, exquisite and translucent. His long eyelashes fluttered like tiny fans and cast faint silhouettes upon his cheeks. Even though this was the face of a man, it was actually more outstanding than her own to some degree. What if this was a woman? What kind of evildoer would she be? And what kind of peerless talent and devastatingly beautiful woman would she be? Feng Lianing firmly gritted her teeth, and suddenly, a corner of her mouth stretched into a sly smile. Heaven has a path yet you don't walk down it, while hell has no door yet you insist on charging in. Today, you will die in here. And there's no one to blame but yourself for overestimating your capabilities and delivering yourself to my door. Humph. You're just an insignificant and useless person on Qi refining stage. And yet you unexpectedly attempted to snatch away Zijin Palace's inheritance from me. Death is the only repayment you deserve. With that, Feng Lianing raised her sword, and unhurriedly moved towards Hushi. The edge of her sword approaching Hushi's flawless face little by little. This is the face that made her, Feng Lianing, feel both loathing and jealousy. If she destroyed it, she wondered if Brother Yu would treat him differently. Chapter 226, Raging Blue Ice Flames. Did you rely on this face to seduce Brother Yu? He. What type of dignified man uses his appearance to serve people? You're really shameless. Since you have no sense of shame, then I'll destroy this face first. And then when you die, I'll let everyone know how despicable you are. The powerful sword edge was just about to touch Hushi's face. However, Hushi was completely oblivious to what was happening around her. She was too busy enduring the sharp torture necessary to receive the inheritance in the void. Hiding in the hem of Hushi's skirt, Dandan's eyes turned red blood, and he was so angry that he was about to rush out and beat that hateful woman to death. The little golden dragon covered Dandan's mouth, and whispered quietly in his ear, "Don't worry, watch me." The next moment, all of Zijin Palace abruptly started to quake slightly, and following that, a low and imposing voice slowly said, "It is forbidden to fight inside Zijin Palace. Those who dare violate this law shall be banished from the palace, and will never be allowed to enter again." Feng Lianying's sword was just about to hit Hushi, but it suddenly halted in mid-air. And turning pale with fright, she withdrew her sword and started looking all around. The palace was still the size of about 100 square meters. There wasn't the trace of a person's shadow, and it didn't seem like anything was odd. With bewilderment plastered across her face, she thought about her perfect preparations for visiting the secret territory. Her master had practically told her everything she needed to take note of in Zijin Palace. And of course that included how to pass through every spirit treasure restriction. Yet even with all that, he didn't mention that you couldn't fight in Zijin Palace. Master had even said that in order to prevent someone from entering Zijin Palace and snatching the inheritance, he had specially prepared a powerful spirit weapon that was guaranteed to be foolproof. However, why now did Zijin Palace warn her that fighting was prohibited? The little golden dragon's purple gold eyes widened in nervousness as he peeked out from under Hushi's clothes, his scales sticking up all over his small body. The woman before his eyes was merely a minor gold core stage martial artist. If it was the him of the past, then with just a simple slap, she would have been annihilated into a puff of smoke. However, his seal had only just been removed, so he was still in the form of a young dragon. He was currently unable to defeat Hushi, let alone a gold core stage martial artist. Therefore, he could only mimic his original master's tone to scare her into retreating, and hope that she didn't dare act rashly. If that still didn't make this woman stop, then he couldn't do anything about it anymore. He could only abandon the little pink pig and flee. Luckily, Feng Lianying's eyes flashed, and eventually, she unwillingly glanced at Hushi with ruthlessness flashing in her eyes. Your life may be great, but your luck, it won't be so good every time. Now for her, the most important thing is the inheritance of Zijin Palace. It was for this reason that they, the Luli sect, had paid a great price. Only then had they been able to be well prepared. They absolutely wouldn't allow any mistakes. As for this stinky boy, with his cultivation base at just chi refining stage, he wouldn't be able to cause any trouble, and anyway, there will be more opportunities to kill him in the future. Thinking until here, Feng Lianing withdrew her long sword and fished out a jade box from within her sleeve. When she opened the jade box, the wisp of an ice blue-colored flame sprang out from the jade box, before it then fluttered in the air and fell into the furnace. This ice blue flame was a 5th-level raging blue ice flame that her master had found after searching everywhere for it. Once it was found after searching through many treasures, it was given to her to help her with refining. Unfortunately, her current cultivation base rank wasn't high enough, so therefore she was unable to subdue the fire within her body. As soon as the ice blue-colored flame entered Zijin furnace, it slowly burned within the furnace wall. Feng Lianing had thought that as soon as her raging blue ice flame entered the furnace, that it would absorb Hushi's low-grade spiritual fire, and then at that time she wouldn't have to move her hands, as Zijin Palace would judge Hushi's trial as a failure, and she would die. However, contrary to Feng Lianying's expectations, once her raging blue ice flame encountered the light golden-colored flame that had already been in the furnace, it unexpectedly dulled in an instant. Chapter 227. The pain of burning heart and forged body. Although the flame wasn't extinguished, the ice blue-colored flame was obviously shrinking. It seemed to be dodging the light gold-colored flame as it cowered to the side, and didn't dare approach. Shock was written across Feng Lianying's face, and following that, her gaze became twisted and rage-filled as she stared at Hushi. Her raging blue ice flames were a 5th-level spiritual fire. When it encountered common low-level flames, it would swallow them whole. But this stinky boy's spiritual fire not only didn't become extinguished, it actually subdued her raging blue ice flames. How was this possible? In the end, what was the level of his spiritual fire? And who was it that helped him to subdue such formidable spiritual fire? Don't tell me, was it Brother Yu? That's right, it was definitely Brother Yu. Without Brother Yu's help, how could he, a boy of chi refining stage, have such opportunities and abilities? Thinking of this, an intense murderous desire surged forth in Feng Lianying's heart, and she had an almost irrepressible urge to kill him on the spot. However, at this moment, the raging blue ice flame in the furnace was accepted, and a wisp of gray smoke wafted out, launching into the space between Feng Lianying's eyebrows. Feng Lianing inhaled a few deep breaths, and with great difficulty, she was able to suppress the killing intent in her heart. Then, sitting cross-legged on the mat before her, she began to receive the test. Moments after entering the inheritance void, Feng Lianing noticed Hushi sitting cross-legged a certain distance away. Currently, Hushi's forehead was covered with beads of sweat, and her lips trembled slightly, as it was clear that she was withstanding a tremendous amount of pain. Her once moist red lips had cracked and lost all color. Like before in this void, the shadowy imprint of Zijin's soul appeared, and informed her about receiving the test. Feng Lianying's face was filled with confidence as she nodded, and soon the image of Zijin's soul imprint disappeared. At the same time, a portion of ice-cold spiritual power wrapped up her entire body. In the next moment, Feng Lianying's complexion changed greatly as she let out a blood-curdling screech. So painful. It felt like all the bones and meridians in her body were being ripped apart. This kind of pain absolutely wasn't something that normal people could endure. Since childhood Feng Lianing had everything run smoothly and had always been hailed as a genius. Sought after by everyone, many people had attempted to gain her favor. With all this, how could she now bear this kind of pain? Could it be that that boy called Shiyu, who was sitting opposite her, had also been enduring this kind of torment? How could this be possible? This type of pain. How could this be called a test? Wasn't this simply asking for a human life? She, a gold core stage martial artist, was unable to endure it, let alone an insignificant chi refining stage martial artist. So how could that brat possibly survive? This loathsome youngster will certainly die in this inheritance void. A corner of Feng Lianying's mouth lifted into a wicked smile, and from her pocket she fished out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into her mouth. Soon, the pain all over her body faded away without a trace, and Feng Lianying's face was full of pride as she lightly laughed. Fortunately, Master prepared this earlier. All I need to do is swallow this spirit powder pill, and I won't need to endure the pain of burning heart and forged body, allowing me to pass this test effortlessly. As for this boy called Shiyu, since he's just a chi refining stage martial artist, how could he ever hope to survive? Seeing how much he's suffering now, perhaps he won't be able to endure it much longer. At that time, wouldn't the inheritance be hers? Feng Lianying sneered, then closing her eyes and meditating, she effortlessly prepared to wait for the test to end. At the same time, Hushi was currently experiencing a hell-like boundless pain. Her every meridian, every joint, and even every drop of her blood seemed to be burning and freezing all at once. On top of that, it felt like countless ants were biting her body, causing her so much agony that she wanted to scream and shout, as well as scratch her own flesh off little by little to ease the pain. However, despite her body being in such terrible pain, from the beginning, in her mind, there had constantly been a part of her that was clear-headed. This part was reminding her, was insisting for her, to become stronger. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.